Let's war rolling at the start. We here to bring the truth. Jar open this podcast. We breaking through the fake news. They try to silence us, but we will be subdued. We're bearded alpha males here to save the youth. Spitting fire on the mic with the bass Christian takes. Exposing the lies, keeping the demons at bay. We ain't afraid to speak up. We won't be swayed. Jar open this podcast where the truth is laid. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas up, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. We ain't playing games, we're on a mission to awaken the masses with our intuition. Pulling out the corruption with no inhibition. Draw open this podcast, sparking a revolution. We're not afraid to stand tall in a world full of deceit. We're the voice of reason, bringing light to the street. Keeping it real, never missing a beat. Jar openers podcast, where the truth meets the heat. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas up, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. Jar open this podcast where the truth will never cease. Join us on the journey to bring back peace. We're rolling out the thugs, fearless in our release. Jar open this podcast where the lies will decrease.
All right. Well, I guess I better center myself on my camera. I'm off to the the right, or is that the left? I don't know. What's up, everybody? We're joined tonight with special guest Dan McKnight. And it's always a pleasure to have Dan on. How's everything been going for you over there? I know you've been a busy man.
Yep, and in 30 states fighting for the defend the guard, we're busier than a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest.
I like that description. What about you, Atlas? How you been doing, bud?
Doing good. Work's been keeping me busy. Doing a lot with insurance, trying to get out of it. But doing well. Enjoyed watching the Chiefs get absolutely smacked in the Super Bowl last night.
Why are you bringing up old stuff, man?
Yeah, right. Too soon.
Dan probably doesn't know. I'm a huge Chiefs fan. I was born in Kansas City and lived there for about 35 years. And been down to Florida.
No sense of making enemies right at the beginning of the show. We should wait and save some of that for later.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, I get it. The Chiefs have turned into the villains, but I was hoping Darth Pat would show up and, get that three-peat.
Yeah. Well, I liked seeing the reception from Trump, right? Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Had a cool moment, made it my thumbnail with Chris Jones, the tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, walked out, publicly shook hands with Trump.
That's a big man.
Around. Yeah, big guy.
Yeah, I saw that actually late last night after the game. I was scrolling around and I was like, oh crap, that's pretty cool. Chris Jones went and shook his hand. I'm sure Secret Service is like, that guy's pretty big. I don't know if I could take him one-on-one.
Yeah, I got to gauge it.
Anytime a guy that big gets close to the president, they're got to be a little on edge, even though, Chris Jones ain't, threat to the president at all, but still their priority, right?
Right.
But what's up, Dirty Money? Glad to see you in chat. He's been streaming all day. He just finished up his stream, cleaning up the streets out there. And, He's shouting out the show and everything. So I think some of the folks from his chat are going to actually show up tonight, which will be cool. And then for me, I'm just recuperating from the loss. There's really nothing exciting from my perspective in that football game. I was at least hoping for some entertainment, but I did have a good day. I smoked a pork butt and then I smoked a bunch of wings. And so the food was good around here. And, I just made a good day out of it. Enjoyed not worrying about YouTube and just kind of kicking back and everything like that. So it was a good day, although it ended rough. But you know what? Chiefs are going to be back. This is not the end of the Chiefs just because they lost a game. I mean, ultimately they only lost 2 games this whole entire season. I mean, well, I guess if you count week 17 against the Broncos when we had our second stringers in, but I don't really count that game.
As a Broncos fan, I'm going to force you to count that game.
It was a butt whooping, I can tell you that much. But
that's funny. We have the whole AFC West in here besides the Raiders.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nobody really wants the Raiders anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's definitely true. So we're going to run through some of this Super Bowl aftermath. There's a theory going around, and then we're going to get into the whole FEMA was caught sending $59 million to luxury hotels last week to house illegal immigrants. People are calling for Kanye to be banned from X due to him getting mad at Elon. Basically, he got mad, I think, and then started posting a bunch of adult content on his profile. And so, I guess it's Ye, not Kanye, but whatever. We're going to talk a little bit about the white genocide in South Africa, which I got to tell you, I haven't dug very deep into, so it's going to be kind of a discovery for me as we go along. I have seen some videos, just aerial views. I guess they got a highway with a bunch of like white crosses, and each cross is representative of a victim of what's going on over there. And then there wasn't any Super Bowl commercials from Elon Musk. There was a big rumor, fake news. We even fell for it on the channel here. There was no Super Bowl commercials from Elon Musk. He was supposed to have the rumor. He was supposed to have, but the word was that he had dropped $50 million or maybe $40 million, I think, actually, for there to be 5 30-second spots, basically exposing what Doge had discovered. But I didn't see one, and I don't think they existed. So we all got caught up in that fake news story. I guess we were just hoping for, and it would have been such a great opportunity. The most watched televised live sport every year would have been a great way to expose just the average American to some of what's going on with their government. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. It was a great idea, missed opportunity. We also got this news story about the military brass is mulling over some presidential orders. There's reports that have surfaced indicating that high-ranking military officials are contemplating their response to potentially controversial orders from President Donald Trump or Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, which is pretty serious if we have the military disobeying the commander-in-chief and Pete Hegseth as well, which I forget his title right off the top of my head.
Secretary of Defense.
Secretary of Defense. Thank you. And then we're also going to talk about, if we have time, this story about the potential FBI leaking information about ICE raids, trying to warn people ahead of time, essentially, that ICE is coming. It's a crazy thought, but it's just one of those, another reason why we need Kash Patel to be confirmed ASAP. I'm not sure why they're taking their time on some of these confirmations. And it's really ultimately the first time in history that I can remember, at least, that the confirmations have been such a public spectacle and moved so slow. But even without these confirmations, Donald Trump is getting a lot done in this first month already. And we're going to delve into some of that stuff as well. But before we do that, Dan, you want to tell people about where they can find you, kind of what you've been working on lately and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll start with where you can find us at Troops Home US on Twitter, or at defendtheguard.us is the website for our legislative efforts, Defend the Guard, and bringourtroopshome.us is the website for our organization. And what we're working on is, we've talked about it once before on the show, we're working on a statewide legislative effort to help reclaim war powers and put it back in the proper perspective and give the National Guard, the states control over their National Guard, so they're not being used to fight in overseas foreign wars of choice. And right now we've got the bill on the table in over 30 states, and we've had major legislative victories in the last couple weeks. In fact, we just passed the Virginia House of Delegates 99-0, complete bipartisan unanimous support. And now we're off to the Senate to fight over there. And we've got other battles going on in Idaho and Wyoming, South Dakota, Tennessee, Maine, New Hampshire. There's 30 of them. But we're going to pass this bill sometime this year. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, he's a proud supporter of this bill. He announced on Fox News last year that he supports and loves this idea. The new director of the Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, has proudly endorsed the bill. Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Vivek Ramaswamy, the list goes on and on and on. We're going to get this bill across the table this year and help restore the proper role of government in foreign affairs, especially when it comes to the use of the National Guard, and ensure that they don't go to fight in wars without a proper congressional declaration of war ever again. So that's what we're up to. That's where you can find us. And we're having the busiest year we've ever had, and this is our sixth year pushing this effort. And the pace of the mission right now is so much faster than it's ever been before. And so we're always looking for more help, more supporters, more grassroots activists, and those are the places you can find us.
Man, that's awesome.
Right.
So if somebody wanted to like help you, what's the best way to actually like they could contribute and stuff like that?
Yeah, two ways. One, at defendtheguard.us/phone bank. You give us 30 minutes a week or an hour or whatever you can give us, 2 15-minute blocks, whatever. We'll train you on how to be an activist on the phones. And what we do with the phone banks is when a bill is going before a committee, we've conducted a 5-column analysis on the entire committee. Every member, we've looked at their entire voting history. We've had conversations with them, and we know whether we call them a double plus, meaning a firm supporter, or a single plus, meaning they're leaning towards supporting it, or neutral or opposition. And we try to move everybody into that double plus column, as many as we can before we go into the hearing, so we know what we're facing before we ever step foot in that hearing room. You should always know the battleground before you deploy your soldiers. And so our phone banking efforts, as little as 15 or 30 minutes a week, can help shift an entire vote in a committee. And the other way would be to chip in, man. We're a small dollar donor organization. There's only 2 paid people that are actually paid by the organization, my director of field operations and my communications director. So if you can chip in $5 to $25 a month at defendtheguard.us, click on donate, and you'll become one of our best supporters. We call it our remnant. And if you know the story of Isaiah's job in the Bible, there's a remnant out there, people that are truth seekers that know the truth, whose job is to carry on this mission as best they can, and they're just bumping along, trying to survive and do what they can. But eventually there will be some gathering of the remnant, and the remnant will save the Constitution. The remnant will save liberty for the individual, for our citizens. And we call it our remnants group for that reason, because we know that we are few that are willing to stand up and speak against the most powerful organization in the world, the federal government, and the most powerful subdivision of that government, the Department of Defense, and ensure that we are following the principles of liberty and the Constitution whenever we send our troops into war. So those would be the 2 ways that I would highly encourage people to jump in and donate. Once again, it's defendtheguard.us and /phone bank to sign up for the phone banking effort. And then Diego will be in contact with you to tell you how to do it. And the other one would be to click on the donate link, which I believe is in the upper right-hand corner on the website.
Okay, cool. I see.
Awesome. Thank you for your efforts, by the way, too. I don't know if we said that already or not, but thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. We appreciate all this because this is something we definitely need to, stop sending the National Guard overseas. That's crazy.
Can I give you a recent example of why this is so important? This is one that I love to talk about it, even though the establishment doesn't. In 2013, to his credit, President Obama tried to do it right. He tried to go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war to go to Syria. And Congress, to their credit, they said no. We're war weary. We're tired of the Iraq and Afghanistan, Yemen wars. So President Obama just went anyway. He tried to do it the right way, but they said no. And he said, you know what, screw you. I've got my own authority to go. And he doesn't, but he thought he did. And when that war started in 2013, fewer than 3% of the troops on the ground from America were from the National Guard, 3%. And when the al-Assad regime fell in December of last year, that war had been going on for 12 years, and the National Guard had grown to 58% of the United States boots on the ground that were in combat roles or combat support roles. And then on December 12th, shortly after the regime fell, and after President Trump had won the election and promised to rip the curtains open and let the disinfecting sunlight come in and look into the dark reaches of the corners of the federal government, the Department of Defense came out and said, we weren't lying, but we were mistaken. There's not 900 U.S. troops in Syria. There's over 2,000, and we don't really know the actual number. And so this is just an example of the runaway authority, the federal overreach, the empire building, the imperialistic nature, whatever you want to call it, of the Department of Defense, the State Department, the CIA, and America's foreign policy when the states aren't involved. So 58% of 2,000 troops is obviously a much bigger number than 58% of 900. But the answer, the correct percentage should have been 0. We didn't declare war. We shouldn't have had our troops there in the first place. And we've got to get that under control. And the only way we can do it effectively is through the states.
Well, one of my first questions I'd ask too, you showed the difference between the National Guard contribution early on versus what we saw with the Assad regime falling. Is that be based on largely the fact that our recruiting has been so poor that we're pulling from other sources that we shouldn't be?
That's a great question. And the answer is a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, right? Recruiting numbers are down, but they're down in the National Guard and the active duty military, primarily for two reasons. One, the pace of the mission of all these consistent deployments and overseas missions that are lasting a year or longer. That's number one. And number two, recruiting is down because the military spent so much of the last 4 years developing this woke ideology that was pushed by Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley, where they were calling, middle-class white kids from the Midwest that joined the military, they were calling them extremists, and really creating this divisive culture in the military. And Pete Hegseth is promised to root this out. He's removed all DEI references, all critical race theory, critical gender theory, all of it for the military through his order as the Secretary of Defense. So recruiting is down. But the other reason why this happens is the active duty military pace of mission is so scattered right now. They're fighting, they're still in Iraq, right? They're fighting in the Middle East. They're fighting in the Horn of Africa. They're fighting in Eastern Europe. And now they're trying to reprogram and retool and rearm back here in the United States. And so somebody has to maintain these roles that they've created. Somebody has to, hold down the forts that we shouldn't be holding. And so they call in the National Guard to backfill. And the National Guard has always been a reserve component of the active duty military, but designed to be a backfill operation for when we go to war and we have to backfill and fill the ranks with additional bodies. And so the way that they're being used now to take over the mission that the active duty military just isn't fully capable to carry on at this sustained pace has been a bastardization of what the state National Guard or the militias of the state was meant to be. And so that's the answer to that question, I think, is it's twofold.
Interesting. And I guess my follow-up with that, I do have a tangent question I would like to take it to. But you might have heard and listened to the Tucker Carlson podcast when he had Mike Pence on in relation to the USAID and all where the money is heading. Now, one of the arguments that Mike Pence had laid forward was there is a positive use of the soft power, this idea of there is a good portion of building the empire for America's sake in terms of getting what we want. I think it's probably the best way I could frame what he had argued there. By definition, though, he kind of argued this in the sense of what it means for imports and exports. Do you think that that's always going to require some kind of military presence to enforce the kind of soft power? Or do you think what we've seen with the USAID is kind of drawn a line for most people to say, hey, we're kind of done with this entirely? I guess, where do you kind of stand on that?
Yeah, I think the white hot spotlight shining on USAID right now. I'm not going to call it USAID, USAID. When you say USAID, it sounds like this charitable organization. That's not what it is. Right. It's the United States. I can't remember what the A is, but it's about international development. And seeing what's happened with that, and Mike Pence's comments specifically about the use of soft power and portraying American excellence around the world to ensure that we deal with the situations over there instead of dealing with them over here. It's a compelling argument, and Mike Pence he's brilliant, and he's uncovered a lot of things that we should talk about. But we have the ability to strike anywhere in the world from the United States within a matter of hours, right? So if there is something that's so important that it requires the presence of the United States or the reaction of the United States, we can do it from the homeland or from our bases in our ally countries, our actual ally countries, in hours. And on top of that, let me talk about a role of the National Guard. We actually have a program in the United States Military Department of Defense strategy. It's called the State Partnership Program, where the National Guard actually enters into these allies or agreements with foreign nations around the world. And so every state has 2 or 3 countries around the world that they are partners with, where we are supposed to send our National Guard to train and learn how to fight and build these coalitions and these relationships with Nicaragua or Venezuela or Brazil or Africa or anywhere in the world. And each state has its own role in this to play, so that if we do have to go fight a war and there's a proper declaration, our National Guard has already established relationships and training and common knowledge and familiarity with every section of the world without having a base there. And that would be the most economical and smart way to handle these things. And so Ben's, I think, is on point that soft power is important, and the use of tariffs and economic sanctions and all those things are important for us to do. But being a military hegemony from the Western Hemisphere, controlling the Eastern Hemisphere, the North and the Southern Hemispheres, it requires a footprint. That footprint requires money, and that money comes from the taxpayers of the United States. And so I just don't think it's an economical way to handle your business. And we've got, I think, military bases in 140 countries around the world. I don't know the exact number, but it's up there around 140. And I think there's just a better way to do it. I think having a base or two in Europe maybe a base in the Korean Peninsula, maybe a base in the Middle East in a friendly nation. That's pretty good coverage because we could strike, like I said, anywhere in the world in a matter of hours from there. So that I think Ben's was right and maybe a little bit misdirected on this.
Okay. And then I'm going to follow that up with, and forgive me because this might go into a tangent here, but I'll relate it to a story that we had just gotten that kind of took the right wing by storm. Now, this was when Benjamin Netanyahu had visited, and we got the quote from Donald Trump that we're going to own Gaza, something along to that effect. What was your kind of first reaction hearing that? Like, what was kind of going through your head hearing that? Or did you have more of like a digested take compared to everybody else?
I think I probably had the first reaction that everybody did. And it was my ears instantly perked up. My blood pressure began to rise. And then I had to think about the environment that we're in. Donald Trump is a negotiator. When I watched that press conference, I don't think Benjamin Netanyahu knew that Trump was going to say that. I don't think there had been a discussion about it because his reaction was one of annoyed stoicism, I guess would be the word I would use.
Yeah.
But I don't think the United States ever, or President Trump ever have the intention of occupying, leveling, bulldozing, and then building Trump Tower Gaza in that part of the world. I think that is an opening salvo and a way for President Trump to literally lay down the law and say, hey, kids, daddy's home. You solve it or I will. And if I solve it, you're not going to like the outcome. And it's a method that all of our parents used on us when we were, rotten kids. And we all understand the effectiveness of it because we'd all rather solve the conflict with our siblings than have mom and dad do it for us. So that's kind of an oversimplification of it. But there is a role for the United States to play. And let me paint a picture for you. In the 1980s, President Reagan sent the National Guard to Central America to build runways and roads, using the National Guard to go down there on training missions to sharpen their skills, because there's things the National Guard cannot do in the United States. The combat engineers and the civil engineers in the National Guard are not allowed to build roads and bridges because it competes with private sector business. So we send them outside the country to train, right? You wouldn't want a road builder in a uniform and driving a green bulldozer competing with private sector business. It would be an unfair competitive advantage. And so sending the National Guard to Gaza in a non-combat role to train using their combat engineers to clear rubble and debris, I think would be a proper use of the National Guard. Is that ever going to happen? I don't know, but I think that would be one constitutional and federal legal use of the National Guard, because in Title 10 of U.S. Code, it says that the president can send the National Guard overseas for the purpose of training. And as long as they're over there training and not actually engaging in wartime activities, I think it would be a proper use. I don't know if anybody's thinking that deeply about it. I think what the people hear on the news is that we're going to have Trump Tower with golden escalator in Gaza, and they think that that's going to happen with the Trump Industries over there building and usurping their federal authority and taking control of land that is not ours to control. But I think it's more of a negotiation tactic than it is anything else.
Yeah, no, I think it was Clint Russell who had posted that video initially, of like that close-in frame of it. Seemed Netanyahu was pretty annoyed. It seemed like he was pretty taken aback by those comments, obviously. And I do agree. I think that there's a large portion of this, which he's the big ask. He's the businessman. I guess the only concern that I have, and maybe I could be wrong because you're the expert here, was the fact that I guess this area being maybe not specifically wartime, but at least having the dangers of such that those, even if it was National Guard on the ground who were doing the bomb clearing, still having high chance of being in active combat based on what we might see from the conflict from the surrounding area. So in those terms, I think most people were still kind of concerned that even if it was a kind of even simplified version of a mission, it would still have high risk compared to if it was some kind of base construction somewhere else.
Absolutely. And I think that that's why it's important that before, first of all, Title 10 of U.S. Code, which allows the National Guard to be called in federal service for overseas training, requires congressional authorization. It's not something the president can do unilaterally. So as long as our representatives in Congress are giving that authority in a proper constitutional manner, they're basically demonstrating the informed consent of the American citizens that this is what we want to be done with our National Guard. And once you have that informed consent and every zip code in America has been bought in, I think you'll see the country get behind it. You'll see proper oversight, and you'll see the proper forethought into what could possibly be a combat mission. But again, it has to happen with the proper authority. And I'm a rule of law guy, but I'm also a pragmatist. I think that there are practical things we have to do in the world. And pure isolationism or abolishing all foreign deployments is something that's not realistic, and it's not something I would support. But I would consider the deployment of the National Guard to Gaza to be something that required so much forethought and so much buy-in that it required some sort of an act from Congress.
Definitely. I appreciate that. I want to let World get some questions in here too. Don't want to dominate the time.
No, you're good. I got this comment from TNT Cycles, and he mentioned that going overseas as an Army National Guard turned his brother into a PTSD having junkie. National Guard isn't trained as well, so far as he can tell, to put the violence behind them. And that's kind of I kind of combine that with what Atlas just mentioned about how if they were just in this instance to be sent to Gaza, they're definitely going to be engaged. And that's what TNT also followed up with, which is the Guard would be attacked constantly, regardless if they're helping Hamasians or not, the Palestinians or not. And I think that would be true. I think, you know, and so I kind of I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was kind of relevant to speak on maybe their training as far as how he mentioned in that first comment.
Yeah,
because I do think it's inevitable that they would be attacked in that type of situation.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm always cautious to say this. To agree when someone says that the National Guard is not as trained as the active duty military, and here's why. I served in the Marine Corps, I served in the active duty Army, and I served in the Idaho Army National Guard, and I can tell you the best equipped of all three of those was the Idaho Army National Guard. They had the best helicopters, the best maintenance program, the best maintainers. And I always felt very confident in our mission because every time I put the uniform on as a guardsman, every single time, once a month, for a long weekend and then 2 weeks in the summer, every time I put that uniform on, it was for the purpose of training for war. Right? When I was in the active duty Army, that was in the late 90s, I wore the uniform 5, 6, 7 days a week. And most of the time was spent in the motor pool, making sure our tanks were lined up straight and inventorying nets and camouflage poles and then attending diversity classes and, learning how to, just do simple stuff that is not really soldier missions. And so I'm very hesitant to say that. And in fact, I'm a firm believer that if something is so important that we have to send the military, any military, and we declare war properly, the National Guard should be the force that fights and wins America's wars. That's the way it was designed to work. Spreading the gunpowder out around the world, around the country. And we've got national defense strategy plans that have built the National Guard into all defensive plans and force structure plans that we have. So, but I do understand that the sentiment that coming home from war, the National Guard may not be as prepared or have the resources that the active duty military has. And I do firmly believe in that because when the National Guard comes home and they get that release paper, first of all, before you get that release, you are asked to declare every single medical issue you have, and they make you stay and treat them at a military base before they will release you back to your home guard unit. So when you've been gone for a year, what do you want to do? You want to go home, right? So everybody says, I'm good. I'll deal with it when I get home. But guess what? When you get home, those resources aren't there. The local VAs around the country, especially when I got home in 2007, were not equipped, manned, or trained to handle all of the influx of young, I'm talking 20-something young, men and women coming home from the war with traumatic brain injuries and PTSD that was different than any other generation before us. The up close impact of the world that we live in, the going in and killing the enemy and then being required to go in and sweep the area and collect DNA from those that have died. That's a new phenomenon, right? Because we were fighting against terrorists that had to be logged and detailed. And so I think the PTSD of guys coming home now was just different. Plus the concussions of TBI and roadside bombs. It's just it's a new phenomenon. So when the National Guard comes home, even if you list every single medical problem that you have before you get released to your home state, you're still rushing through treatment because the last thing you want to do is be stuck at Fort Hood or Fort Campbell or someplace on demobilization orders instead of going home to your family. And so I would agree with that sentiment. And for the person that posted that comment, I'm sorry I missed the name. If your brother is TNT Cycles,
You're good.
I pray for your brother. I pray for your brother that he gets the help he needs and that the local community can wrap their arms around him instead of just casting him off to the side, because we see that in so many situations that he becomes a menace to society and they just discard him as not worth the effort. There's resources out there, my brother. We'll help you find them if you need them. There's more than you can count. You just have to be willing to reach out and ask for the help.
Yeah, definitely. And then TNT followed up and said, "I don't mean to disparage the Guard. Thank you for your service and your experience." And we agree. We all agree on that one.
Yeah,
for
no,
sure.
thank you, TNT. I appreciate that.
Cool.
If I was to follow it up, I think one of the things I've also seen with Pete Hegseth coming in is this tightening of the guard, like what you had said, excising all this kind of woke garbage. But with that, I think I've also seen a lot of people complaining, namely a lot of homosexual individuals and people who just seem like they shouldn't be in the military in the first place. I would expect we would probably see a fallout of people leaving the military. Those who probably wouldn't be there under Peg Hegseth's guidelines. Obviously, we see with women leaving frontline combat as well too. I would expect that we would probably see what's the right word for this? A raising of the standards, raising of the bar, if you will, of what's allowed, what will be accepted in the military. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a great thing, to be honest. But do you expect, I guess, in your estimation, do you expect that we would lose a lot of people based on this, based on the Pete Hegseth's changes that he'd bring in with him?
Yeah, I think having a conversation with Pete in West Palm in December, we talked about this at length, and he has no desire to chase any able-bodied person out of the military whatsoever. So he doesn't want to raise, or I shouldn't say that, he doesn't want to change the standards to disallow anybody that's willing and wanting to serve. And so your sexual orientation should have nothing to do with your ability to serve. And so he doesn't want to change those standards. He wants to raise the standards back to where they should be. Having a biological male unable to complete 10 push-ups or run 2 miles, serving in the military, that's a problem, right? You are now a liability on the battlefield. And if you're a liability and you have to be cared for by another able-bodied person in the military, you now have taken 2 people off the battlefield, right? And so I think his desire is to return to lethality. The military, for all of the things that people want to talk about, how much we respect the organization, they're designed for one thing: to be lethal in defense of America. And we want them to be the most lethal fighting force that we have. We don't want them to be soft, squishy, fighting for gender policies and social equality and all these other things. And in fact, let me give you an example of what we're fighting for in Idaho right now. You want to talk about this woke ideology just infiltrating the ranks. For 2 administrations, 2 different adjutant generals of the Idaho Army National Guard, there was a policy in place that systemized this woke agenda. And there was a young major who had actually been serving, he'd been in the Guard for almost 20 years, so I say young, kind of tongue-in-cheek. And in his civilian life, when he wasn't a guardsman, he was running for the state legislature in Idaho. And at a campaign event as a civilian, implying no endorsement or support for the military, he made a statement that said that he did not support drag queen story hour for children. Very benign statement, but one that is shared by probably 80% of America. He had a soldier in his command that he didn't know personally, didn't know his sexual identity, who happened to be homosexual, that filed a hostile work environment claim against this major who was decorated and honored and served a fantastic career. The adjutant general assigned a inspecting general to investigate the claim, found the major guilty of violating some military code of woke agenda bullcrap, and they recommended him for discharge from the military, and he was kicked out. Right? So that is, and then the governor found out about it, and he punted it to the Department of Defense. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. The National Guard, unless you're federalized under Title 10, you're under the purview of the governor. The governor's the commander-in-chief. And so what we want to do, we want to protect the Guard from this woke ideology because it's so divisive. It is so corrupt. It's a cancer inside the ranks. And I think what Pete wants to do is he wants to get rid of all of that garbage, focus on this. Everybody in the military is green. You might be light green, you might be dark green, but we're all green, right? Nobody cares who you sleep with, right? If you can execute the mission, if you can shoot straight in the right direction, and you can carry out the orders of your chain of command that are lawful, then you should serve and you should be welcomed into the forces. That's not what's happened. They've used, especially under Mark Milley and Lloyd Austin, they've used the military as this social petri dish to push critical gender theory and critical race theory instead of lethality and mission completion. And it's got to stop. And I think that's what Pete's primary focus is going to be.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, I know under Milley, they've been basically lowering their requirements and the standards and everything like that. So more people can basically make it through the training and everything like that. And that's just doesn't send, to me, that doesn't send a message of fear to our enemies, which ultimately our enemies, in my opinion, they understand fear and death more than they understand anything. You know what I mean? Especially the folks that we've been fighting lately in the Middle East and stuff like that. you know, you got to speak their language to them. And whenever they hear the reports of, you know, some DEI hire essentially running a ship aground, or just even, you know, they look at some of these people on their own TikToks when they're filming themselves, and it's just like, I'm not scared of this person. I'm not scared of this person at all. You know what I mean? And so I have heard that. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I want to cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have heard since Pete Hegseth has been approved, confirmed, that recruiting numbers are actually starting to go up. So maybe that's a good sign, especially if some of these folks do opt out. I think we saw a bunch of people in the CIA or other government entities basically are given the option to quit just this last week. And a lot of them people just are like, yeah, I'll peace out and I'll be done with this or whatever. So if people in the military are given that type of option or something like that, and they're just, you know, they want their safe space, you know, their safe space is taken away from them within the ranks, then maybe they'll bow out. But I am encouraged that we're replacing them with stronger, you know, sturdier people as the recruitment numbers have gone up and stuff like that. So
absolutely. And I don't know about the recruiting numbers. I've heard that report, but I haven't seen it. But I think it's probably true, because if you look at every major conflict America's ever fought in, it's been won on the back of barrel-chested, strong alpha males from the heartland of the country, right? It's almost never won with the squishes from the inner city or somebody that's there for anything other than the defense of America, right? If you're there for anything else, you're there for the wrong purpose. And I understand there's reasons to join the military, like college tuition and your mortgage program. Those are benefits, though. The purpose of joining the military is to defend America at the end of a gun, right? That big, strong alphas, whether male or female, are there to carry the heavy lift, to be willing to sacrifice and write a check for the value of their life to their country. It's being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And so that's why we're so aggressively fighting for the Defend the Guard Act and this new bill that we've just written. Actually, because of the situation in Idaho, you're going to love the name of it. So I just wrote this on Saturday night, and I just presented it today to try and get it officially introduced. It's called the Pride Act. It's called this on purpose. It is the Protecting Readiness, Integrity, Discipline, and Excellence Act in the military. So we're taking the word back, right? Pride has been used for all the wrong things. It's been so targeted. So we're calling it the Pride Act. And what the purpose is to focus on military readiness and operational discipline. It prohibits the implementation, teaching, and application of divisive social theories within the Idaho National Guard. It mandates political neutrality, and it establishes strict enforcement measures and legislative oversight. So we're giving the legislature back control of setting the framework for the discipline and good order and conduct of the National Guard. And we think that this fight is going to attract all kinds of good and bad attention. And so I would say that the name, the Pride Act, was done intentionally because I think it's going to attract some attention. But we want this to be in place because senior officers right now are vetting junior officers, social media posts, any contribution they've done in public, anything going back the entire length of their life to see if they're qualified to serve in the higher ranks of the military. Well, I'm sorry. If you are a lieutenant colonel, or general, your job is to lead troops, execute missions, and win wars. It should have nothing to do with whether you marched in a parade when you were 18 years old or whether you made some comment about Drag Queen Story Hour. None of that's relevant. Can you lead men and women in uniform, and can you follow the lawful orders of your chain of command? That should be it. So we're excited about this bill as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great bill. You know, one thing I would highlight too, I was actually getting ready to say this too, and that kind of follows suit as well. One of the things that they actually attacked Pete Hegseth for was he ended up having a shirtless picture that was floating around, and people took his Christian emblems and iconography that he had tattooed on him, as well as previous statements he'd made, to make him out to be a very hardcore, Christian extremist, to use their language. I guess I've always held the position, because I'm a bit more radical, even by MAGA standards as well, that it's always a matter of not if or no religion, but a matter of which one. And so I guess for me, when I see the political neutrality, I enjoy that and I wish it could be upheld. But ultimately, I find that it always is going to matter on a long enough period of time, a kind of dominant ideology will take hold. And so I guess, when you look at the way that Pete Hegseth is, it's protect with critical theory, protect all, this kind of Marxist communism, globo jihad that we've had coming in, but also be anti-Christian. I guess at a certain point, for me personally, I would like to see the opposite of that. and see Christian values actually reign over once again, and actually take kind of like a primal root in what the soldiers actually hold, deep values to them as well, kind of being taught in that in the military too. But I guess not to ask you if you outright oppose that, but also if you see that kind of taking force again, like 20 years from now, what's to stop that kind of secular ideology taking hold one more time?
No, that's a great question. And the answer is we live in a society of laws and rules and the rule of law, but it requires moral people for that to take hold, right? At some point, you can write laws, you can write penalties, you can write all the guidelines you want. But if somebody is immoral in their application of those laws, it doesn't matter. They're going to find a way around it. But I think that our country was found on Christian principles. I know that's going to be unpopular to some people, but probably not on this network. I think you guys are fine with your audience.
Yeah,
and those morals, they are the guiding principle for almost all the laws that we've written in our country. And we should openly oppose the creation of Sharia law in America, because it's not our country. That is not what we are founded on. We are founded on Christian principles. And so I think that in order for us to do this, we have to fight this culture battle tooth and nail. And it's not just the critical gender theory or critical race theory. Let's go a step further and let's talk about the original Trotskyites, right? The Leon Trotsky followers from the Russian Revolution, who were in the 60s and 70s became the neocons of the Republican Party, right? The neocons are as bad as the social warriors of today, maybe worse, right? Because they were all about Russian independence and Russian revolutionaryism and returning to communism. And you look at guys like Bill Kristol, who heavily benefited from USAID, or John Bolton. I can't wait for all the things to be uncovered about him. Those people, those neocons, are as bad as anything George Soros has ever funded, maybe worse. And the Liz Cheneys, the Dick Cheneys, the Bush family, all of them. The Trotskyite neocons, we should call them what they are. They were Marxist extremists wrapped in a conservative cloak. And so it's our job to root these people out. And when you talk about yourself being radical, let me tell you something. Listen, I don't know if you know this, but radical comes from the Latin word root, right? We don't want to trim the bushes and cut the grass. We want to get to the root of the problem. We want to get back to the foundational basis. So are we radical? Damn right we are. Because we're not looking for a Band-Aid. We're looking for a permanent fix to a long-term problem based on the principles that we all believe in, including Christianity, morality, and the Constitution of the United States. Thomas Paine was one of the great founding fathers, and you should read him, study him, because he had this right. He understood that you had to get back to the root of the issue.
That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Most people will talk about politics being downstream from culture. So I do think you're right? The origin of this, if you want to see it even be upheld with law, words don't matter on a piece of paper unless the people are willing to uphold them themselves and actually act it out every single day.
Right.
And what you said too about the Trotskys as well, and the extreme, communism. I always bring this up too, so hate for the audience to repeat myself all the time. But we've long known that a lot of what's been taking place in our country was a 70, 80, 90 year operation. It was planting seeds that these people knew 30, 40 years from now will overtake the institution. We'll start chipping away with these kind of deep-rooted, kind of degenerate ideas, but we'll plant them in a way that's such that they will grow and people will adopt them. And so that's also what I would like to see too. I would like to see the right wing do that in the opposite direction, instead of always being reactionary to everything, because we're always kind of like on our heels playing defense when it comes to what's going on with the social culture as well. Some people kind of give up on that idea too. They go to well, it's the end times, it's just going to keep getting worse. But I like to be more optimistic. I like to think that there's always going to be greener grass on the other side. So in terms of that too, I think that's a great answer as well. And I do hope Pete Hegseth holds up a lot of that as well. I look to him as somebody who I'm really glad that he did get it confirmed. I was expecting more confirmation. Wild that it went to a 50-50 vote, but luckily we had JD Vance in there. We didn't get our Mike Pence moment, early on into a Trump administration. So I thought that was really good. But I did want to also focus on a few other things with that as well, which was, I think as long as we stay on this current path and we keep building momentum, we will eventually fall out of this reactionary movement, such as with people like yourself as well, putting in work to do the phone banks and things of that nature too. The longer and more often we can get people to be just as active as we've seen on the left, because they'll be active no matter what. I think it's a good sign is watching the right wing be more active and be more vocal, because too many times all we see in the news is us reacting to left wing protests. The right wing's at home. We're watching it on TV. while they're out and about doing whatever they'd like to. So hopefully we can get shows like this to grow, people like you and your movement and everything else to grow too. But it's a really good development, and I enjoyed a lot.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think you're right. Like you said, culture is, down, or politics are down river from culture. And I think we're in this renaissance period. Trump calls it a golden age of America. I think it's more of a renaissance, that almost like the Scottish Enlightenment has come back to the shores of America. And we're starting to see people really think deeply about individual liberty and freedom and all the things that were built into the Constitution that you don't learn in public education anymore. It's so important that we understand the founding fathers, their intent, the Federalist Papers, the Constitution, all of our founding documents, and that shouldn't be a throwaway line in a political speech. And so we're excited about this Renaissance period that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. I've gone so far to say that I feel like there's a revival around the corner as more and more people seem to be waking up and kind of settling into the Christian realm, although it's still rather soft. When we say this, we talk about this a lot, but we have a lot of pastors, church leaders that are more concerned about, people tithing than actually getting down to some of the grassroots issues of society, and where mainly the left is trying to take us as they kind of, destroy culture as they take over. We see it with they want to put kids on puberty blockers, and just how they all reacted to basically F your freedom when it came to the pandemic, all that type of stuff, right? And they I feel like we had more people from the pulpit particularly, but just being bold, calling out the evil for the evil that it is, it would really fast track us more than ever and start taking some of that ground back that Republicans have ceded to the Democrats over the last 16 years. I mean, 12 of the last 16 years, we've had a Democrat leader with Obama and Biden. And, a lot of people will say it's just Obama over the 16 years. But in that time period, I just feel like the Democrats have slowly just taken more ground, and the slippery slope has led everywhere that we thought it would. Every time we mention a slippery slope when it comes to, people were warning about the whole gay marriage thing, I believe, I think that was during Obama, right? Maybe it was actually beforehand, but people were still warning about the slippery slope and what it would lead to. And, not only did it take a Christian word that is specifically defined in the Bible as a union between man and woman in front of God, for basically their own purposes to get marital benefits. They tried to use the excuse of well, if my loved one is in the hospital, I don't have any rights to how their care is. It goes to their family and things like that. And they could have accomplished some of that just by calling it something different than marriage, because these people obviously hate Christianity as well. So it's weird to me that they want to even use the word marriage, but I guess that's just how it's societally defined. But the slippery slope of that, what people were saying, well, it's going to lead to this and that and whatever, and pretty much this, that, and whatever has come to fruition now by at this point. And there's new things that they're introducing, and every single one leads to this evil, dark place that destroys children. It destroys people's lives irreversibly, causes all this damage. And I feel like this next 4 years of Trump, it might even be 2 years, because who knows how the midterms are going to turn out, are so vital to us from a Christian perspective of taking as much ground back as possible, in addition to deporting people at a rate that has never happened before, that we've never seen in our country. Both of those things go together as far as making this place better, safer, more Christian. I mean, the whole thing. And we need to make it so severe that if we lose in 2028, which I don't see it happening, because the Democrats are just coping so hard right now. They don't understand why they lost. They catered to the fringe. They spent $1.3 billion in 3 months trying to get Kamala, all the while yelling Trump was a threat to democracy, although they didn't have primaries for her appointment. It's just so crazy, right? And all the while we're a constitutional republic. We're not even the democracy that they say. But this next 2 years are so vital, and if we maintain the House and the Senate for the following 2 years, those 2 years become even more vital than this one. But we really, really need to just take ground back and not. Unfortunately, we got a lot of old guard Republicans still in leadership, and those people are going to resist. They hate giving up their control and their power. All of them do, even on the Democrats, Republicans, and so it's unfortunate that any of the Republicans would literally go against Donald Trump and the mandate that the American people have set. But anybody that does at this point, to me, it just indicates that they don't serve the people. They don't serve the ones that elected them, and they're really just self-serving. And to me, it should be a career ender. Unfortunately, they're able to make so much money, which when you get to their level, it's about campaign funds and raising money and things like that. And so a lot of that supersedes like the people's will. Essentially, we know the more you spend on a campaign, the more the higher, better chances you have of winning that election, whatever role it is. There's few exceptions out there. What Brandon Herrera almost won his. He's the gun guy there in Texas. Can't think of his name on X or whatever, but I was hoping that he would win that little one, and he spent pennies compared to what his opponent did, and it was still down to very slim margin. But that's just one off the top of my head where the person that didn't spend the most actually had an opportunity. But
well, look at Trump. Trump spent a fraction of what Kamala spent and won an overwhelming plurality of the popular vote. It's not about the money, and we've got some examples. We're going to defeat a couple of longtime Republican incumbent neocons. We've got challenger lined up for Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. We've got a challenger in Kentucky for Mitch McConnell, and they're not just throwaway candidates either that are designed to keep them occupied. Mitch McConnell's nothing but a screensaver anymore. You have to jiggle the mouse to get a response out of him. And Lindsey Graham is one that's testing the waters on everything, and all he wants to do is fight more wars. And the dainty little Southern belle, Lindsey Graham, it's time for you to go home. But
for real,
to give you an example of like Tom Tillis, he's the new Senate Majority Leader. He was going to vote against confirming Pete Hegseth. And just to show you what the power of the grassroots is, we activated the grassroots phone bank. And we flooded his DC office and all of his offices in his home state until the voicemail boxes were full. And then when they emptied them, we did it again. The next thing you know, he released a Twitter statement. I am going to support Trump's nominees, period. And now look at him. He's gotten in line on Pete Hegseth, on Tulsi Gabbard, on RFK Jr. He's towing the line because politicians understand two things, pain or pleasure. And I'm not here to give pleasure to any politician. Right? So we want to make it hurt a little bit. The other thing you talked about there, you talked about the speed of Trump and how fast we have to reclaim as much ground as we can. What is today, the 10th of February? So he's been in 11 and 10, 21 days, 3 weeks today, 3 weeks tomorrow. Did you ever think that we would see the amount of winning that we've seen in the last 3 weeks? He is reclaiming ground right now, and I think he hit the hard reset button on America. And we're going to see that, right? Yep. And then the last thing you said, you talked about tithes in church, and this is a little bit off topic, a little bit, but I want to talk about the tithes in church. I don't think that it is important for anybody to pay a tithe to any church that seeks their tithe. But in the Bible, to get a little bit of religious philosophy here, there's one promise in the Bible where God says, if you do this thing, I will rain blessings down on you so heavily that you won't be able to contain them all. You won't be able to accept the bounty. And that is tithing. But he doesn't say to pay that tithe to any specific church. He says to return to me, Lord Almighty, a tithe. And I will open up the gates of heaven and pour this bounty down on you. And so we have to find out what that tithe is, and whether it's good causes in politics or church or your community, or if it's your time, your labor, your resources, or if it's donating to the local food bank, whatever that tithe is, challenge it. God challenges you. He's like, prove me now. Watch what happens. If you don't believe me, try it and see what happens. And so, I'm not an overly religious person that attends any one church, but I am very spiritual, and I have an incredible relationship with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I can tell you without a doubt that if you challenge him on this, he will answer the challenge, and you will receive the bounties that he has in store for you.
I love it. I agree 100%. I've actually, it's funny is I've gone through periods where I tithe heavily and then not. And it's so weird how it literally correlates. Um, especially if you start off from a very, a place where you can't rub two nickels together, you know what I mean? And it's just like, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm what I'm called to do, and just have faith that God will deliver that promise. And then, within the year, I had one of my best financial years successfully. That was like 2010. And then it went on for quite a while until we actually moved from Kansas City to Florida, which everything was kind of reset. And it was, my wife moved down here 10 months before I did. Everything was good, but it was just, she took a job right away and I had to stay home and sell the house, pack and sell the house. And so it took 10 months to get back, living together or whatever. But, and then in the process of that, it was a whole nother thing, finding a house to buy, because we're still renting down here and everything. But once we finally got back in the groove, found a church, started tithing. Once again, it's like, wow, I actually can see the return on this. It's so weird, whether it's views with the channel or she's a realtor, she sells a house, just whatever. And it's just like, man, that literally, it's just, you can see it, you can feel it. And it's pretty cool because it's worked out for us whenever we focused on it. So
it's important that we identify it when it happens, because if we think it's us, if we think we're just kicking butt and we're doing so good, we enter that pride cycle where we don't think it's necessary to continue the tithe. But as long as you recognize that those bounties are coming from a special place, they're coming from our Savior. It keeps us humble. It keeps us hungry for more of that love and that compassion that He has for us. And I think that's important.
Right. It just bothers me when, leaders from the pulpit almost seem like they don't want to go to certain topics. One thing Atlas brought up on the last show is you'll never see a pastor from the pulpit talk about people getting fat, basically. Right. I mean, I you can probably word it better than I'd have, but it's just one of those things where it's like, I think they hold back on some things just because they don't want to drive people away who could possibly give them money, drive them away, period. But ultimately, I think they're, afraid of offending people sometimes, which I wish they would be. I mean, there is fire and brimstone out there, but I just wish there was more people trying to, because it's a cultural thing, like we referring back to the cultural thing. And if we can fix the culture from a biblical, from church perspective and challenge some of these things, we're going to end up with more masculine men come out the other end. People would be willing to be more bold, to fight for the truth and things like that. Whereas, I had one pastor that was just, come as you are. If you're gay, it's fine. And things like that years and years ago. And when I look back on it, he was just a businessman. He ended up cheating on his wife and leaving. Now he doesn't even believe in God. He openly doesn't believe in God, like on Facebook and stuff. It's really weird. And so like I've seen the progression of like how a weak man was actually up there trying to just make it a business. And, I wish and I hope that we can bring some more masculinity, Christian-based masculinity into society. What we really need.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say one thing before we get too much further. I would like to give anybody has a question for Dan in particular, please put JO and then type your comment out. We can kind of sort through those as we get through the show too. I want to hit Dan with everything while we have him here. The second thing in regards to this too, but also secondary subject, one thing that you mentioned there was the deportations and the problem that we do have with the fact that there are millions of illegal immigrants in here. The legal immigrations aside, we'll just focus on the illegal portion here. We have estimates anywhere from like 10 to 40 million, depends on who you talk to, whose reports saw what. But in returns of the culture aspect and being downstream, one thing I've seen a lot of people in the dissident right group get upset with is the fact that we went from like reporting numbers online to not reporting numbers at all to now we have very low numbers of deportations. And so we're kind of like on pace, I think, right now to even deport less than what Obama did during his term. I guess, what do you make of that when it comes to when Trump is out and we kind of risk this transient period where we may not get another MAGA candidate in, or we kind of risk the fact that there could be a kind of baking in of these immigrants who are already here? And what happens when it's 8 years down the road? That idea of mass deportations kind of doesn't have as much momentum among the people as well too. So I guess I'm someone who's a very large proponent of ensuring we do get mass deportations in, no matter what, no matter what the cost, no matter what the emotion is of the news cycle media, no matter how they paint it as well. But I guess, what would your kind of thoughts be? What happens if we don't get that promise? What happens if we don't get the deportations that we need?
Well, we live in a representative republic. President Trump ran on a promise, and he doesn't deliver that promise. It's our job as the citizenry to not accept failure. We accept failure from every politician. They say one thing and they deliver something else. But the rate of deportations of violent criminals is up. The overall rate of deportations happens to be a little bit stagnant from where we'd like to see it. So I think there's a triage effort going on right now. Let's get rid of the worst before we start going after the good, honest, hardworking people that are here for a better quality of life. And so I think we're seeing a very deliberate and purposeful triage of the worst offenders. And I think I saw a report the other day that said that of the deportations that have happened so far, those Con Air Expresses going down to Venezuela and Mexico that are dropping off people back in their home countries are overwhelmingly made up of violent offenders. People that have been here more than once, that have been turned away more than once, and are repeat offenders. And at the same time, we're also securing the border, where now we are at 98% of the border cross. We're down 98% in the border crossings, because they've deployed the Marine Corps and the National Guard to the southern border, and they've turned loose ICE and told them to do their jobs, giving them every resource that they need. We haven't even started building the wall yet, right? And I don't know where I come down on the wall idea. I think it's a great idea, but a wall could be virtual, it could be physical, it could be manpower, it could be technology. I'm in favor of all the above. You know, it's just like running a campaign. Your campaign has to have 19, 20 legs on the table. You can't just have one. And so I'm in favor of all types of wall. But you're right, we must export as many of the illegal, especially violent offenders, and those that are here blatantly violating the U.S. rule of law. I'm fairly compassionate. I live in a rural state where we have a lot of migrant labor here. But all we ask is that you come here and do it the right way. And I think they need to, as part of this process, they need to expedite the legal immigration process and hire more immigration judges, give strict guidelines, and understand that we are going to vet everybody that comes in this country. And if you're here for honorable purposes, welcome. And if you're not, we're going to show you the door. Just don't let the good Lord hit you where you split you. You know, I don't want you here anymore. Right. You know, and I think that's what we're seeing with Tom Homan. And speaking of Tom, you know, we got to meet him in D.C. a couple weeks ago, and presented Defend the Guard to him. And he hands me his phone. He says, "Put your number in my phone right now. We need to talk." And he goes, "I would love to have full access to the National Guard to defend against this invasion at our borders." Notice he didn't say southern border. He said our borders. That's ports of entries. That's airports. That's the northern border, the southern border. And so I think that Tom Homan, combined with Kristi Noem at Homeland Security, and now Joe Kent, who's now the director of the Counterterrorism Center, we're going to start seeing these people being rooted out, because the number one highest priority right now is to find those thousands or even hundreds of thousands of terrorists, known terrorists, that have been allowed to come in our country over the last 6, 8, 12 years. And I don't know if you guys listen to Sarah Adams at all. She's a former CIA targeter, talk on Sean Ryan's podcast, or on Tucker Carlson, or on Crowder the other day. And she talks about the number of thousands of known terrorists that are here in 5 to 7 person cells that they know have crossed the border, and the Biden administration just let them come on in, and they've lost track of them. Those should be the highest priority, because if we don't get rid of those, we are going to see an attack similar to October 7th in Israel that we saw from Hamas. We're going to see it here in the homeland, in our cities, in our malls, Bismarck, Boise, Salt Lake, Phoenix. They're going to see all these targeted cell attacks. And 9/11 happened with 19 terrorists. And if there's thousands of them here working in 5 and 7 person cells, imagine the death and destruction that they can deliver. So while deportations are important, rooting out the worst of the worst is probably the highest priority for anybody in the Trump administration right now.
So do you think that that might be why we're seeing anywhere from 300 to 600 people being deported a day? Like, it's pretty low rate. Do you think that the reason for that is because they're actually spending the time trying to find and locate some of the worst and dedicating the majority of the resources to these type of situations?
I think there could be two truths, right? We could be focused on getting rid of people that are here illegally, that have committed violent crimes, and rooting out those that are here for nefarious purposes, whether members of the cartel or terrorist organizations. Both can be true. And I think we have the resources, or we will have the resources, to go after both at the same time equally. What we don't want to do is become a Gestapo, right? We don't want to be sending in ICE to elementary schools in inner city Chicago, like the news reported, which turned out being absolutely false. We don't want that type of a culture. But what we do want is respect for the rule of law. And if you are not here properly for the right purposes with the right authority, we're going to come get you. And Tom Homan's made that clear. And whether it's happening at the pace we want or not, I believe it's being done methodically. I think it's being done with deference to the law and a little bit of human compassion. And so far, what I haven't seen is a story from Guatemala, some American reporter, bleeding heart liberal down there, interviewing somebody that got ripped away from their family that was just here serving tables in downtown Salt Lake City, and ICE took them because they were an easy target. We're not hearing any of those stories. What we're hearing is that people are violent offenders that are being taken out of American jails and prisons and sent back to their home countries.
Yeah,
So you heard from Tom
we get to
Homan?
that question, Will. I just wanted to ask this too.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
What do you make of the fact that we've gotten multiple reports now that I think it was like the ATF and I forget what other three-letter agency, but there are insiders who are actually leaking some of the ICE operations ahead of time to some of these cartels and operations to ensure that like as few of them as possible actually do get taken care of. Because I think on the lines of, what would you call that? The sedition? I mean, that would probably fall under the lines of sedition, outright doing everything from the inside to ensure the government can't do its job to kind of soil it from, degrade it from the inside. What kind of level of punishment do you think is deserved upon people like that who choose to do something so against not only what the people chose for the representative government, but also the orders that they are directly supposed to be enforcing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we are still waiting for a head of the FBI to be confirmed in the Senate. And I think we need to have that done in order to enforce the laws that the FBI is supposed to be enforcing, and the policies. It's not just the laws. Policy directives come from the top. And the FBI is absent a chief right now, and that needs to hurry up and happen. And I think Kash Patel is going to be an amazing in that role. But what we need to see is those policies being enforced and standardized across the lane. So to get back to like the issue, the question, I don't know a good answer for that. I wish I had a really philosophical, deep understanding of why it's taking time or why it's being done the way it is. But I do know this: it's coming, it's happening, and I have no doubt that we are following the proper process and the rule of law. We're 21 days into the administration, and we started seeing changes on day one. It's going to take a hot minute to get some things sorted out. We've got to ramp up resources. Kristi Noem has announced that they are, they're backfilling all these positions. I believe it was 60,000 people from the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and one other agency that decided to take the buyout instead of returning to work. Those are people that we need to replace and backfill, and then we need to get them the hell out of Washington, D.C. and send them out to the states where they can actually do their jobs. Because when you go to D.C. as part of any administration, you become entrenched and you become drunk on the swamp water. And so we've got to get those agencies out of D.C. and sent back out to where they can actually do good amongst the people. And that's not just with the FBI, Homeland Security, or any of the others like that. It's every government agency. Department of Agriculture, get it out of Washington, D.C. Let's send it to Omaha, Nebraska. Let's get the Department of Veteran Affairs out of D.C. Let's send it to North Carolina, to Charlotte. Let's, Department of Education. Never mind. Let's just scratch the Department of Education. Department of Finance. Let's put it somewhere else. Department of Interior. Let's move it to Missouri. You get out of D.C. and you quit promoting the people that have been in D.C. the longest. We'll stop getting that kind of thing. And so you talk about the culture shift. We'll get away from that culture of dependency on the federal government. And all these things started happening in the first Trump administration. He moved BLM out of D.C. and put him in Colorado. First thing Biden did when he got back in was send him back from Colorado back to D.C. And they want that because it's a consolidation of power. It buys a standing army for the establishment. And we've got to find a way to get rid of that. And that includes bringing additional resources to Homeland Security, Border Security, ICE, Department of Justice, FBI, all of the agencies that are designed to protect us. We've got to get them out into the communities where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. We got a question from Tix Bomber. Do you feel the penchant of the U.S. to wage proxy wars is going to see a dramatic shift going forward? The military-industrial complex seems long overdue for a house cleaning and remodel from the ground up.
Great question. Our DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, She's been preaching her opposition to regime change wars since 2015, when she ran for president. I think we are going to see a massive restructuring with John Ratcliffe at CIA, Tulsi Gabbard at DNI, where we're not going to find ourselves, especially if we can just completely crush USAID. We're going to stop seeing a lot of the things that we've been involved in. The coup that we fomented in Ukraine in 2013, 2014 that caused the Ukraine-Russian war. If we can stop putting those things in American dollars, an American philosophy of the intellectual community or the intelligence community, we'll start seeing a lot of these proxy wars going away. One thing that has me incredibly concerned is a proxy war that we are still fighting in Syria, where we are supporting Al-Qaeda, we are supporting the Taliban, and we are supporting HST, which is the Syrian branch of Al-Qaeda. We're on all three sides of that conflict right now. It depends on which agency and which dollar is or which one's doling out the dollars. That just shows that we have no consistency or congruency from the departments in the government, and we've got to stay out of their business. We should be exerting American will through greatness, through free trade and enterprise, and through just a higher moral order than what we're seeing in the rest of the world.
I love that. I love that answer. That's 100% agree. Well, we mentioned it a minute ago, and let's actually have a look at this here. Let me change the layout. We have this from here. Breaking. More reports are coming out that the FBI is leaking information about ICE raids. Cash needs to be confirmed ASAP. And I got this little clip here from Fox News. Let's go ahead and just we'll let this play here.
That led to a handful of arrests, but no TDA gang members. A stop at another apartment complex netted no arrests.
It seems like they were tipped off. They knew this was coming.
So yeah, I do get the impression that there were some intel leaks here, and I think that probably they did know we were coming, but we're still coming. And just because something leaks now and then it's not going to stop us.
The police, you have a warrant. Come out with your hands up.
Also on their radar, this previously deported Honduran illegal alien with pending local charges for strangulation, kidnapping, and possession of fentanyl.
Get the out of my neighborhood! Get out!
While activists yelled outside, agents recovered this stolen rifle from inside the man's home.
That's a sniper rifle of some sort. It's so funny those
like
people are saying, is it a Barrett?
Looks like it.
I was going to say, it's funny these people are standing there yelling, get out of our neighborhood, while we're yelling, get out of our country.
Have you noticed that the riots that we've seen in protest of ICE and deportations all include massive crowds carrying Mexican flags? I don't understand.
Right.
It seems so coordinated and also counter to their own message. Right? We love America. We want to stay here, but we also love Mexico a lot more.
Right.
Well,
They just want it. It's true. They want to just enjoy the benefits that America has to offer in America, but not, get with our program. The word
is
is
the lack of assimilation.
Assimilation.
The fact that we've kind of institutionalized the idea that the cool idea to have, the in idea is anti-American, and everything else is actually better than that. And so it's why you see so many different kind of pockets all around the country of people kind of grouped together, because that idea of once being an American meaning something like we're all American, that's kind of like disappeared. Trump's bringing it back, but there's still going to be like this, what seems to be what we see with what you said, this coordinated effort here, whether it's being paid and funded from USAID with the BLM, with what was the Tide Foundation, like $150 million into them. But this coordinated effort of ensuring that people don't rally behind that idea and that people stay divided over grounds such as ethnicity largely, or what country you've came from. And that's the stuff I'd like to see get pushed back on, and returning to this idea of like American being like your number one identity, not your color or your orientation, but like that we are all American.
Right. I totally agree with that. Let's play the rest of this video. It's another minute.
They were planning to net triple-digit arrests as a result of this operation, possibly upwards of 200 people. ICE officials told me at the end of the day yesterday, they only had 30 arrests, only one of which was a confirmed Tren de Aragua gang member. It certainly felt like everybody knew this was coming, including the targets and the local media. We'll send it back to you.
And did the local media, did they get ahead of the operation?
They were everywhere we were, sometimes ahead of us, it felt like, along with some of the local activists. This raid was initially supposed to happen last week, guys, but 2 media outlets wrote articles announcing it. It got leaked to them. They wrote articles announcing that ICE was coming to the Aurora area to conduct a huge operation. ICE canceled that raid, moved it to this week, and everywhere we went, the local media was there, followed quickly by those anti-ICE activists. It definitely felt like people knew it was coming, and ICE officials told us the same.
Dang, that's crazy. So I wish you would have named those news outlets, because with all these USAID not leaks, but just the information coming out from it, that they were funding Politico, they were funding the New York Times, they were funding the BBC. It's like, what news outlets actually were the ones that were writing these stories and tipping them off? Because it almost like it's in the realm of things now that we understand how bad it really is. And I don't even know if we understand how bad it is yet, right? We're just the tip of the iceberg. Like you mentioned, 20 days into Trump's presidency. Like Doge has only just started looking into USAID. Who knows what else is out there that still needs to be looked at and what they're doing. And I just can't help but wonder if our tax dollars through this organization was actually working against ICE, putting their lives at risk. Not to mention, I mean, if these hardcore gangsters or whatever from other countries, as Trump says, that they're being released out of prisons and mental institutions and stuff like that. If these people find out armed with a Barrett 50 cals, what that probably was, regardless of what if it was just even just a sniper rifle. I mean, you're putting American ICE agents and more. I mean, the news was there. Anybody else that was there, lives at risk. Like, it's just so crazy. Like,
and if it's true, it is a betrayal, but not just for the ICE officers that are risking their lives to enforce our laws, but for every American citizen who expects that their government is going to uphold border security and ensure our Republican form of life, our liberty, our security, our property.
Right.
And we are a sovereign nation. Our immigration laws, they exist to protect us, the citizens, right? And if we can't expect that, and the deep state is corrupted, and they're allowing and leaking this information, they are subverting our own liberties. Right? They are acting in contrast to what is best for us as citizens of the United States. And the America First movement, it stands for law and order. It means that fully funding and empowering ICE to remove those who break our laws. It means any government official obstructing that mission is not just failing their duty, but they're aiding and abetting illegal immigration and actual people here to subvert our laws. It's got to stop. And I think that we've got the right people there to do it. And ultimately, if the members of the federal government, the FBI, or any other federal agency is working against immigration laws and enforcement, then we need a deep structural reform more than what we actually know. And I think the USAID thing being uncovered is just a drop in the bucket. And the American people deserve a government that works for us, not against us. And the weaponization of our institutions, it's got to stop. Every official responsible for leaking any ICE operations must be investigated and prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. Period. End of story. Hard stop.
Oh yeah.
Right.
And the federal government, in my opinion, their number one job is to protect us, protect our borders from, foreign and domestic from enemies. I think that's like where it started as far as the federal government goes. Like, I don't know, maybe it's not where it started, but that should be priority number one.
It is to protect and preserve sovereignty, security, and the constitutional rights of the citizens. That's their only purpose.
Right. If they can't do that, then it's like, what do we even have a federal government for? Obviously, the answer to that would be for these people to enrich themselves and serve their lobbyists and anybody that gets them elected, rather than the American people who vote for them. Unfortunately, too many people can vote that don't care about anything other than these fringe ideas. Really, is what it's come down to.
Guys, I got 2 young puppies, 8 months old. They're out my door barking at me, so I'm gonna bounce. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on again.
Oh, you're good.
Is there anything that we can address before I jump out of here? I got a few more minutes.
Do you have any other questions here?
Just gonna say, maybe if chat has any questions or anything like that. But no, I appreciate you coming on with us. It's been a great experience. I love your background there, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna. I meant to put it on you. Put that whole thing on there. That's pretty cool. I think I need to work on something like that for
I'll tell you, I had the technician in here the whole day. I was down at the Capitol building. I was testifying today on an anti-union bill in Idaho that would stop the teachers union from being able to have their union members' dues withheld from their paycheck by the state and paid to the union by the state. I was testifying against that bill, and so I told my technicians, I said, get in the studio, fix the background. I'm coming on the jar openers tonight, and I want it fixed. So you guys are the first ones to see it.
Nice. Well, it looks good. I do want to ask you, just on a personal note, like, how was your trip to DC for that inauguration? For me, I guess I'll lead in. We had inauguration tickets. Come to find out that my local guy, congressman, was the one that got the tickets for us. He pulled some strings and had us on the 5th row. So it was unfortunate that we couldn't actually go to it and experience it. But then we waited in line all day to go to that rally the day before.
Sure.
And I mean, we were in line for like 8-9 hours. Got there fairly early. I mean, it was miles long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I figured out a way to cut a bunch of people too, but still didn't make it inside.
You didn't even get in?
No, it turned into a giant cluster at the end. We didn't even get in. And then I know when we were texting, you mentioned that they canceled some balls. Did they cancel the one that you were scheduled to go to? Because I noticed they still had some other ones, but I wasn't.
No,
sure.
the Starlight Ball, which is the one that we were going to go to. That's the one that's kind of the fancy one, where there's it's the high dollar donors, which I'm not. We just got invited to it. We were told that one had been canceled, but they ended up having it, but they'd scaled it way down. We ended up going to the Liberty Ball, which was still a beautiful ball. But my wife looked amazing in her dress. I looked like a penguin in my tuxedo. I wanted the powder blue 1970s tuxedo. She told me no. So the ball was crazy, standing in line for hours to get in when it was 18 degrees outside.
Yeah.
No heaters, it was miserable. And then when you get in there was no chairs. It was just a couple high top cocktail tables and a big dance floor.
Oh man.
It was a zoo, and we all got the inauguration flu while we were there. And so we cut out early right before Trump showed up. We got out and beat the crowd. I like you. I had really good tickets for the swearing in ceremony. We were in the reserve section right up front. Mm-hmm. And thank you, Senator Risch, who I battle with every day for those tickets. Even though him and I don't see eye to eye, he still took care of me as a constituent. It was really kind of cool, but we didn't get to go. Yeah. And that was the biggest bummer. That was the thing I wanted to do the most. And so I laid in the hotel room and watched the swearing in on my TV. And then I worked the Senate office building for 2 days, delivering copies of Scott Horton's most recent book, Provoked, which is maybe the best collection of writing and research on what America did to start the Ukraine war. I took that to all the members of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Nice. And had some good conversations with senators and just got some good work done. And then we flew straight to Miami and went from 18 degrees to the tropics of Miami, and was there for a work conference and got sick again. Dang. But it was an experience. I'm glad I went to it. I'll never do it again. And it's something I wish everybody had a chance to do it. I just wish that it wasn't such a hostile weather environment while we were there. But you know this, getting around DC was impossible.
Yeah, we just walked everywhere. We stayed pretty close to the Capitol building, so it was about a 10-minute, or I think it was like 13-minute walk for us or whatever. And it wasn't too bad. The weather was kind of cold, was definitely cold, but it was cool seeing some snow. Living in Florida for so long, I hadn't seen good snow for a while, so we were outside walking. We actually had decided to leave the line to get into the rally the day before to go ahead and make sure we got our tickets. They were just, for show at that point. It was obviously not to be able to get into the inauguration, but we're like, we got to get over there to that building by 5 o'clock. So we hoofed it over there and got there at about 5 till, and actually met our local dude, and he showed us around. It's not the Capitol building, but it's like where his office was next door. Right. Showed us around some of the meeting rooms and stuff. It was cool. We went in there and sat in some of the chairs where they all sit in the rankings and whatever. And his wife actually was escorting my wife and I around a little bit and stuff. And so that was pretty fun. Met Mark K while we were there. And I don't know if you know who Mark K is, but he's they kind of hinted that he might take over for Rush Limbaugh. He ended up getting canceled off of everything. at the same time. So that was kind of cool meeting him. It was funny. He grabbed a trash can or a trash bag from that big room to protect his tickets from getting snowed on.
Right.
And he's like, he told the congressman, he's like, I stole a trash can out of the whatever, or a trash bag out of the one room, but I feel like I kind of paid for it. And it made me laugh. He's like, I feel like I've kind of paid for it.
Awesome.
I was like, dang, I kind of wish I would have got one too. Thankfully, we were able to keep our stuff dry on the walk back. But yeah, man, I just wanted to, it was a bummer we weren't able to connect.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things. Like inauguration day was pretty depressing, honestly, because we sat around the hotel the same day as well and just watched everything on TV. And I pretty much, I think I stayed in the hotel the whole day, honestly.
Right. We did a lot of DoorDash and just stayed in. It was a mess. It was something, like I said, I never wanted to miss. But
yeah,
I'm glad we did it. But who was your representative from Florida that
Aaron Bean.
Okay, gotcha. So
Yeah.
we had what's funny is you said something I've heard 100 times from people that went to the inauguration. I actually got to meet my member of Congress or my senator, and they were in their office, and I got to talk to them for 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes or whatever the number is. Those interactions shouldn't be rare, right?
Yeah.
We should know our members of Congress. They should know us, and when they see us coming, they should pucker up and wonder, "Oh crap, did I do what I said I was going to do or not?"
Yeah.
We should hold them so accountable that they know us. My congressman, Russ Fulcher in Idaho, his door is open to me. I go in there regularly, and the conversations I get to have with him are no longer threatening in nature. They're collaborative. Hey, Congressman, what are you working on that I can help? Can you help me with this? And we have a very collaborative nature, and that's the way it's meant to work. And so, like I said, I've heard that so many times, and I just wish that we could find a way to get those representatives back into their districts 4 days out of the week. 3 days they should be in Washington doing the work of the people. 4 days they should be at home in their districts learning what the people need. And if we could just get that philosophy ingrained in our society, we get rid of these Mitch McConnells and Nancy Pelosi's and people that are there for an entire career.
Yeah, for sure. I was wearing my insurrectionist hat, and
Radical.
he's like, "Oh, that's the best hat in the room." I thought it was pretty cool.
Awesome.
I
Well,
do
guys,
wanna say,
I appreciate it. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say thank you very much for your time. Everyone
You
here
bet.
appreciates it. Our community enjoys it. We bring guests on, especially somebody your stature as well too. Good luck with all your adventures as well, getting things done too. We need more of that in this country. And God bless as well. So take care, Dan.
Thank you so much.
man.
I really appreciate it. You guys take care.
Yep, you too, bud. Thanks again.
Yep. Peace out.
All right. Dan McKnight, everybody. Make sure you guys click the link in the description and check out his organizations. I only put one of them in the description now that I think about it. Let me go ahead and put the other one in there as well.
Yeah, I have his website and his Twitter accounts are on my description. If anyone was interested in following him, both his personal account and his foundation account. Bring the troops home.
All right. I got both links in there now. Man, I love talking to Dan. Yeah. One of the earlier comments that we got was, oh, wow, a tie. This feels professional or whatever. It cracked me up.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's from Donnie.
Yeah. Don't ever expect me to wear a tie on here. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. Dan
Maybe in the
McKnight
future.
spoofing the
I
play.
almost did actually wear a collared shirt earlier. But I'm actually fat now because I have a newborn and I'm just a big fat old man now. Still don't fit. So I wore the shirt instead.
Yeah, I see a house mention that Aaron Bean is a Main Street Republican. Yeah, he's a heavy Trumper though. Like, he's America first. I've spoken with him a couple times actually, and got to meet with him there for probably a good half hour that day when he was taking us around and stuff like that. And I'm on his. They do these calls for his district, and so they call me, and then it's like a big conference call type of thing. And he's supported Trump pretty hardcore. And he's definitely against the whole woke bull crap and everything like that. So
I got a question from TNT earlier. I'm going to go find it. Actually, I caught it. He says, you're in Ohio, right? Yes, I am in Ohio. He said, have you ever watched Just Jen's channel? It actually sounds familiar. Said she's in the Cleveland area. I actually lived in the Cleveland area. Oh, man, this had been back in 2019, 2020. I worked as a machinist there in Cleveland. I work for a company called Switchback. What they did is
Oh, so
we
you should
made
be a Travis Kelce fan.
yeah no we made no, he's from Cincinnati actually, but we made things like what's it called, machines for companies like Jelly Belly, Mad Tree. We produce like very like big custom mortar machines to produce things like on a factory level as well. It's a pretty tough job. But I did work with Devin. If you remember the receiver who played for Ohio State, his name's Devin Smith. His dad actually worked there, and I worked alongside his dad right next to him. We never spoke, but I knew who he was. So that was that's the story from Cleveland, though. But I've never heard of Just Jen. I think the name sounds familiar, though. I will look her up though in the aftermath.
The
They said
name
he's
does
from the
sound familiar to
Cleveland
me
area.
too.
Maybe he went to Cincinnati is what I'm thinking of. He went to the Cincinnati school. Let me fact check myself.
Yeah, fact check yourself because Thane says Kelsey is from the Cleveland area. No, I think he is actually. He was a Cleveland Browns fan, I think, growing up or something like that.
Yeah, okay. He
And
went to
like
Cincinnati
Cleveland
College.
Heights, I think, something like that.
Yeah,
Whatever
I
that
was
is.
mixed up.
They played at Cincy, is what he said. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you should be a Kelsey fan, dude. What the heck? Oh, I see. You're a Jason Kelsey fan, which means you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
You know, I do prefer Jason Kelsey.
I actually do.
But
Too.
there's only room for one wigger, and that's me.
Dude, it's so funny because I've said that Travis Kelce dances like a black girl for years. When he used to do his dude, he'd do his touchdown celebrations, and I'm like, don't twerk, dude. Don't twerk.
Right. It's like it's natural though. It's natural to do this. No, I feel like I missed another question in there. No, one thing that I was going to ask Dan before he left, which I think we should touch on a little bit, was the idea of the civil conflict. How close we feel to having civil conflict, which I think the idea has kind of died a little bit since Trump's been elected. I think we had tensions. I think the reason why most people felt it was because if Kamala wins, it's like imminent, like the country's going to start falling apart, and that'll be a real more short-term version of like what's going to happen. But when we got talking about the fact that there are all of these terror cells inside the United States, it got me realizing too, you know, if we do put boots on the ground, say we put boots in the ground in Gaza for whatever reason, whether it is for redeployment or something along those lines, or we strike, or you even look at it in the terms of a cartel kind of shootout, like say they actually they balls up and they start shooting back at one of these deportation efforts. Then you look at the fact that we have all of these people carrying Mexico flags. It makes me think that there could be a chance where maybe not long term and over a long period of time, but I think there's a good chance that we could see that there are going to be small little skirmishes where a bunch of Antifa Black Bloc individuals get involved. Maybe they get info leaked to them as well. And you have some kind of standoff situation like that. In terms of like the long term, I really think if we, like Dan said, kill things from the root with a lot of this stuff, we'll take a lot of the energy out of it. But still on a long scale, I think without the actual insertion of the Christian value and ethics, it's still ultimately not going to be entirely sustainable. And I say that for reasons even outside of the geopolitical realm. Most people can even relate to this too. When you look at, say, like the dating economy and things of that nature, all of this stuff that kind of isolates young men into areas where they can be extremely kind of depressive, ultimately manic, based on what we see with just kind of degeneracy at large. I could see it actually taking form in a different sense than like countries being against each other and even sides, but also the fact that you have a mass rate of disparticipation from men because they ultimately just don't believe in the system anymore and they don't find any value in it at all. But hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we can start right some of those wrongs. But I think if there's a way it could play out, it would be that way.
Yeah. TNT asked me what quarter did I turn off the game yesterday, and to be honest with you, dude, with about 3 minutes left, I dozed off in the chair for a couple minutes. I woke up and watched the very last little bit, and then I turned it off. I didn't watch any of the celebrations or any of the post game or any of that type of stuff. You know, it was depressing. Not really. I was already over it. I had coped by the fourth quarter because I knew we were gonna lose like the end of the first quarter, dude. It was so bad. Yeah, they want to know if you got an acorn tattooed on you.
Yeah, no, it's I saw it multiple times actually. It's fun. I'm surprised it didn't come up earlier. No,
Bad.
it's 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 a Chinese fan actually from like fanning the flames. It's from the Naruto Shippuden. That's like a Tachi right there. But the tattoo is fanning the flames, right? It's like it's my when I was a lot more of an accelerationist than I am now. That's one of the ideals that I actually upheld was I saw this country going to garbage. So a lot of the ideals I was like, well, let's fan the flames, make this happen faster, actually. Bring on the new age. Let's get this over with. But yeah, it's a Chinese fan, not an acorn.
What up, Chris? You missed Dan McKnight if you're just getting here, but it's all good. It's all good.
Hey, remember one like equals one Red Bull for Chris. We will take it there ourselves.
Why did I just get a bunch of likes? No, that's funny.
Right.
Oh, you're in a lot of pain. Yeah, sorry about that, man. I hate to hear that. Adult men should not wear other men's names across their back. Well, sometimes I do. I got to say, got a Mahomes jersey. I got that Bucker jersey shirt back there. I will say the one
thing in
thing
basketball.
I will say the one thing that I benefited from yesterday, which helped to ease the pain, was I think I made like $80 on 2 different parlays. I gambled on the football game, guys.
This is the sports ball guy you're talking about.
But I picked yeah, exactly. I picked let me see what it is. I'm pulling it up. I bet $5 on Juju Smith-Schuster going over 13.5 yards. Worthy
that was
going
his
over.
line.
Dude, it was so low. I was like, if he catches 2 balls, he's going over 13.5 yards. And then I picked the over on D-Hop getting 10 yards, the over on Worthy getting 56 yards, and Worthy getting 5.5 receptions. Oh, wait. No, this one is wrong. I didn't win this one. I needed Saquon Barkley to get a touchdown in order for that one to hit. That would have been for like $200. But I hit 6 of 7 on that one. The one that I won, it was Worthy to score 2 touchdowns and to get over 53 yards, which I thought was a little bit of a stretch with the 2 touchdowns, but I know he was the most. He's way better than people give him credit for, and he was Mahomes' #1 target. And then what I make? I made $36 on that one, and
I was just thinking that.
I made $18 on more Worthy. I just went Worthy across on overs on everything. So I mean, that at least softened the blow. I actually made it was like $50, $55, but. You know, don't gamble. It's not a gambling show.
Yeah. No house said, incoming steak ad. The logo is going to be down here.
Right. Angling
FanDuel,
or gambling sponsors. That's
somewhere.
funny. We're going to have a little DraftKings freaking emblem or something later on. No.
Or what our next guest is Dave Portnoy. Like, I wonder what we're going to talk about.
Right. So
Barstool Sports matchup.
Definitely not advocating for gambling. I know it's something I shouldn't do.
This is financial advice.
But you know. Yeah, gambling for Christ. My bad. Something I need to not do. After this show, I'm gonna take the $56 that I have and send it to my bank account and never gamble again.
See,
till next year.
See, banter wins, dude. Banter wins. We have just improved World's life.
Yeah, I'm trying to improve.
But no, what's funny is Donnie's like very anti-sports. I think that you can do both, right? Like I can pay attention to sports and I can also see what's going on in politics. The real issue is exactly what what takes most men over though, which is it's like their primary focus. You know, I shared that Alex Jones clip in the Discord not too long ago, just talking about the fact of you can rattle off, oh, you know, the exact yardage and the average depth of target that Patrick Mahomes had versus Tom Brady, both in their AFC championship games. But you couldn't tell me a lick about what Edward Snowden dropped in his NSA leaks, you know, back when that was a major thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all these like kind of ideals there where this bread and circuses idea. So there is truth to what that is, right? There is truth to the fact that you can let it become an absolute distraction.
Yeah.
And when you make it your primary focus, you're leaving behind the main things you should care about. And it should be just as that, right? It should just be like a hobby, like a thing that you enjoy. It shouldn't
Right.
take over as like a primary, like, the number one thing, like, people have their marriages break up over stuff like this.
Yeah.
I'm not taking care of
Oh
the
yeah.
baby tonight, honey. Like the game's on, like, shut up. Things like that where it's just ultimately it's like, no, you can't let that become such a massive thing in your life. It's got to be a level in which you go, okay, this is just a game on TV.
Oh, dang, Chris. I learned long ago not to gamble. We honeymooned in Atlantic City, and while sitting out on the balcony, got a front row seat to an epic meltdown as a man gambled his house away. Yeah,
No,
that's
Chris actually was like, you'll get it next time, Chief. Go on, one more.
one more. Have you ever seen National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation, where Clark Griswold basically gambles the house away, and then
Yeah.
his son gets a fake ID, and every time he just pulls a random slot machine, he wins a new car. His son is like super lucky. He's like partying with the high rollers and stuff.
Yeah.
That was so funny. Oh, I thought that was a good
There's a
movie.
lot of people though. I think a lot of people in my circle, they've gambled, before. Like they're into the sports gambling. Even growing up, it's just like I would never gamble, dude. Like as soon as I turned 21, it was like I went to a casino just to do it. But
Mhm.
like gambling for at all, it's like nah. It's like one of those things where the risk is so high and you could be addicted. You're just like, I'm not even gonna bother with it.
Mhm.
But with this sports gambling, and now you can do it from your phone. I don't gotta walk in anywhere. I don't gotta, get a hold of somebody's bookie or do anything along that. It's like, yeah, I can just right from my bank account. Um, we might see a bit more of a downstream effect now because we're only in the first like year or two, three maybe, of most states kind of even allowing it in the first place. I think Ohio only allowed it less than a year ago now at this point.
Yeah, same
Um,
with Florida. There's
so we
like
may see
we
like
can't even use DraftKings or anything like that down here. I got to use like the one specific allowed
the
predetermined.
allowed one.
Yeah.
And we might just see some men throw their lives away, like absolutely just throw their lives away. And it's
Well, it's
one kind of big Ponzi scheme. They always win 51, you 49.
it's funny because we're talking about retaking the culture back for a Christian type of way of thinking, and meanwhile, the sports leagues are embracing gambling and they're endorsing it. Like I had such a problem with this actually when it came to Pete Rose. Pete Rose, like the greatest hitter in Major League Baseball history, right? You look at the dude's stats and you're like, holy crap, this dude got 2 to 3 hits a game, like for
Right.
his entire career. And he got kicked out and banned beyond, like, as soon as he died, they put him in the Hall of Fame, but they wouldn't give him anything, any recognition at all. Even after Major League Baseball was endorsing DraftKings on their websites and stuff like that, and their commercials, and taking ads and ad money and putting it on their games, and it's just like so stupid. Like where's the principle in that? If you're gonna embrace the gambling nowadays, you might as well let Pete Rose, the greatest hitter in history, um, have some accolades or whatever. But
Yeah.
I see
Also
Donnie
want to
said,
say,
sell
well,
me a
thanks for
plot
the
of
big
land
super
in
chat, Donnie.
yeah, to sell me a plot of land in Scotland so I can call myself a lord. I remember those. There were so many people that were doing those ad reads, and turns out they were not actually getting what they were paying for.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, that is a good idea. I think there should be a point in which martial like fighting and sports like that should be a thing. Like I think there should be a point in time in which at a man of a certain age, it should be probably whether it's ordained by the church or whether it's ordained by the high school they go to, in some form there should be some level of martial combat being, taught to these kids.
Mhm.
The only reason why sports actually has an
Everybody
edge,
should get their kids into wrestling.
they're wrestling too, right? I think the only reason that sports has an edge, and I think I say that with like football and basketball, is because the mental components of like teamwork. A
Mhm.
lot of everything else with fighting is one on one. There is a lot of really good, positives that come with being left to your own devices. It's like if you're wrestling and you're on the mat, it's me versus you. No one
Yeah.
else is stepping in here. It's me
Mhm.
versus you. Really
Yep.
good positives with that.
Teaches you how to
Where
deal with winning. It teaches you how to deal with losing. And there's nobody to blame but yourself, unless you try to blame the ref for a bad call or something. But
right,
that's like one individual instance. If you wrestle for years, the lesson is greater than, for sure. I want to acknowledge this. TNT Cycles sent a $10 super chat. Appreciate that, sir. Said, I'd like to ask for prayers for Andrew from Desert Drifters YouTube channel. He was in a horrific car accident and may not survive. He's a good Christian and could use some help. We'll definitely say a prayer for him as soon as we get off. And also, just to add to that, we're still praying for Atlas's daughter with her stuff, with her kidneys,
with
right?
kidney.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to write that down, actually. Andrew from Desert Drifters. Everybody grab a pen and paper. We're not moving on until everyone has pen and paper in hand. Andrew from Desert Drifters.
And I'm the type of person where if somebody asks me to pray for them or something, I typically will do it right then, but we'll wait 15 minutes and do it. And just make a good habit of, if somebody asks you to pray for them, either do it right then or take a note or whatever, and make sure you do it.
Yeah, Donnie said it's posted in the Discord as well too. But thanks for that, TNT. Thanks for
not doing that, Donnie. And thanks for the 10. That's awesome of you, TNT. You didn't have to do that to ask for a prayer request, but certainly appreciate the support. I appreciate you being here every show, man. You make me laugh every single time, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So send me a Walmart gift card. Chris said, once Major League Baseball and NFL got into bed with gambling, it opens them up to scandal. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, it's so easy for somebody to have the app, like a referee or just whoever, to get the app and make little bets. I mean, they could do it during the game even. It's pretty crazy.
Right. Tiny says, I pray for free. I need about $15 more to pray, guys. $15 more. No, just
from now on, if you guys want to do a prayer request, it's got to be at least 15. Just so you guys know. I'm just teasing. Just teasing.
Yep, I'll put on my best gay voice and turn on my smoke machine.
But we got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk about this one other main story here. For the most part, this is like one of the bigger ones, really, and that is that Doge has discovered. I think it was Doge that discovered it, that $59 million that FEMA has sent $59 million to luxury hotels just last week to house illegal immigrants. And that's something that we've talked about before on the channel. We've played it multiple times, people one or two times, people on the street speaking Spanish saying that their healthcare, their hotel, their kids' healthcare, all this stuff was being paid for. We know it's through the CBP One app, which Trump had shut down, by the way. But let's see here. Bring this over and we'll switch the screen up. The Doge team just discovered that FEMA sent $59 million last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal migrants. They're immigrants, Elon. Get it right, dude. Sending this money violated the... Say what?
Criminal aliens.
Criminal alien... I can't think of the next word, so it's just that. Okay, anyways, sending this... I was going to try to add something to it, but then my mind went blank. Sending the money violated the law and is in gross insubordination to the president's executive order. That money is meant for American disaster relief and instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegals. A clawback demand will be made today to recoup those funds. So, word to the wise, if you own one of these 5-star hotels, you might not take that check and cash it next time they try to send you some money from FEMA. Just saying, right?
Prison, all of them.
Yeah, prison. If you can't pay it back, you go into prison. That's for sure. You're fired and you go into prison. You're going to be sitting in trials for the next year. But
at the same time, I just want to have the side point here. At a certain point, you do have to question what's the right way to say this? The shame factor, the shock and awe factor, or the reality rather, or the lack of shame factor that sending someone to prison has versus other methodologies. There comes to be a point where, at a certain point, if this continually happens over and over and over again, I think that does call into question, should there be even harsher penalties? for the people who choose to do this, especially when so much of it happens constantly.
Right.
At a certain point, you got to go, okay, prison doesn't scare you enough. Okay, now we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Right. Exactly. And so then we have this next follow-up from Elon. Under Biden, FEMA betrayed the American people by diverting funds meant for natural disasters to pay for luxury hotels for immigrants. Then he actually reposted this one from Robbie Starbuck. The FEMA situation is much worse than spending $59 million on illegals, as our citizens still suffer from national disasters. Per great work from Brianna Morello, we know FEMA spent hundreds of millions on illegals over the past 4 years. And that's only one agency. Total betrayal. And yeah, this 59 million was just what they sent last week. This isn't like a total. This is just what they sent last freaking week. But we have these images here. Here, let me change that so you guys can read it. Wait, I want Atlas on the screen still. There we go. Department of Homeland Security announces 380 million in additional funding to communities receiving migrants. These are FEMA. FEMA again. Department of Homeland Security announces distribution to more than 77 million in congressional funding for communities receiving migrants. These are freaking sanctuary cities, right? Sanctuary states, which Pam Bondi has shut these down. And I think she might have shut it down before this 59 million even was sent out. Whoever pushed that button, prison, tar and feathering, right? And as you said, potentially even worse. But that's as deep as we can say that, because we can't call for violence, even though if it's upholding a law. But Department of Homeland Security announces distribution of more than 12 million in funding. That was U.S. Embassy in El Salvador. FEMA awards 110 million to the Emergency Food and Shelter Program to assist migrants, not to assist the victims of I almost said Katrina. FEMA had that big disaster with Hurricane Katrina, but of North Carolina, East Palestine, Ohio, the recent wildfires, or even Lahaina, Hawaii. Right. Then Politico put out New York City to get 104 million from FEMA for asylum seekers. See how they worded that? Politico, paid for by USAID. Another one, finally, FEMA, Department of Homeland Security announces 300 million in direct funding for communities receiving migrants, and 340 million for a new competitive awards process. So I don't know what a new competitive award would be, but I don't think that's the Jelly of the Month Club. You know what I'm saying? What the hell are they talking about? Rewards. It's like, so you're saying Gavin Newsom got a kickback from FEMA for having a sanctuary city is in his state? Is that what I'm understanding of that? I don't know, but it comes off as super sketchy and definitely inappropriate. And then we have this one right here. How the F were illegal immigrants getting $59 million to stay in luxury hotels in New York when FEMA tried to kick out 3,000 Hurricane Helene victims in Western North Carolina out of hotels in the winter. Can someone please explain this to me? The company with that video right there. Just going to run through some of these as we count down to the end of the show. Cat Turd posted, I want people perp walked and thrown in prison for this. That was his response to the Elon post that 59 million was spent last week. Let's see here. This woman is a registered independent voter. She gives her opinion on what she's seeing between Elon Musk, Doge, the Democrats, and independent voters' perspective. It's a 35-second video. So I thought this was actually a good analogy that she gives in here. Let me blow that
put
up.
on my listening to woman face.
Democrats are acting like cheating boyfriends right now. I'm sorry, but somebody's got to say it. I'm independent. I think there's good ideas on both sides. There's bad ideas on both sides. But what this Doge audit is reminding me of is like a girl taking her boyfriend's phone and like hiding in the bathroom. And the Democrats are just banging on the door. And they're like, you are invading my privacy. You can't go through my phone. And Elon Musk is like, yes, I can. I can see what you've been up to. And then every time Musk comes out of the bathroom, he's like, look, see what you did? They just turn it around and they're like, you invaded my privacy. This was your fault. You broke my trust. Democrats are acting.
I thought that was a good analogy.
Yeah, women are definitely masters of manipulation.
You caught me doing this messed up thing, but you're not supposed to go through my phone. No. I can just picture Chuck Schumer at that podium saying, we will win with Maxine Waters and Al Green next to him shaking his cane. Like, it's such a freaking cringe.
Elite level gaslighting.
Oh man, so bad, so bad. And then this is another one from Matt Van Swole. He said, so when hundreds of people were waiting in lines for propane in Western North Carolina, so they didn't freeze to death, we were sending $59 million to luxury hotels in New York City for illegal immigrants. Make this make sense. So I don't know if this actually, the timeline correlates, because the $59 million to answer Andrea's question was last week, but that wasn't the first of the money that was bypassing these people that needed help to survive, Americans that needed help to survive, and going towards the facilitation of putting illegal immigrants in 5-star hotels, which of course they're being fed. I mean, is room service, not room service, but are the maids still coming through and like taking up, like fixing their bedding and doing all that crap all day too, or what? Like, you think it would be, but I mean, wow.
Yeah, I highly doubt most of them are even working at all.
They all just had the little thing on the outside of the door, skipping on the maid service, getting their towels brought to them and stuff like that. Living the high life in 5-star hotels, eating expensive ass meals.
Yeah, well, I would prefer, tar and feather times 10, but ultimately, more than a perp walk.
Right.
I want I want the media to tremble. I want like the New York Times to be crying as he writes the article about what's going to happen to people who commit this kind of atrocity against the American people. And he says, make it make sense, but obviously there's no, just only common sense required. They hate Americans. They hate the American people.
Right.
Specifically, when we were walking through that in real time, the areas that were affected by these hurricanes were largely of one political purview.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and we even got reports of FEMA passing up houses with Trump signs.
Right. And what happened with that lady, right? Where's her court case? Where's her, 20-year sentence for not only just like betraying the trust of the people, abusing a position of power, and ultimately being held liable for the fact that some people may have ultimately been in worse damages because of her. And I don't want a civil trial. I don't want her to be paying money from some other scam that she got people's money from. I want these people, just short of being dehumanized completely, but take your assets, go to prison for the rest of your life if that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
When your assets don't go to your children, they're going to get split up and divvied up amongst the people that you betrayed. They'll be sent out to strangers you've never met, but people that you chose to abuse and lie to and destroy on these certain days.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to happen to you. I would like to see some more of that action as well too.
I would definitely agree. And then this one, this is a post from Patrick Bet David saying, I don't know to where 500 billion is the reason why America supports Doge. And let's check this video out here.
Who got the money?
To financial institutions in Europe and other countries.
Which ones?
I don't know.
$500 billion and you don't know who got the money?
The loan went to the loans go to the central banks, and they then put them out to their institutions to try to bring down short-term interest rates in dollar markets around the world.
Well, let's start with which central banks got the money.
There are 14 of them, which are listed I'm sure they're listed in here somewhere.
All right. So who actually made that decision to hand out $1 trillion that way? $500 billion. Who made that decision?
The Federal Open Market Committee.
Okay. And was it done at one time or in a series of meetings?
A series of meetings.
And under what legal authority?
We have a long-standing legal authority to do swaps with other central banks. It's not an emergency authority of any kind.
Anything specific about it?
Do you know my counsel says Section 14 of the Federal Reserve Act.
The reason why this even rubs me like even more aggressively than probably what it should is because of the fact that they pushed all across the country. We see all this stuff all the time. But one example in particular is the story of Dylan Brewer, who was a 19-year-old who did a burnout on a pride flag that represents homosexuality and degeneracy that was painted on a city street intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And they're throwing literally everything that they possibly can at a 19-year-old kid because he dared blaspheme against the global homo gay order of what this country has adopted. Meanwhile, a man who has no idea what to do, no responsibility or accountability for $500 billion, which, mind you, is a single digit percentage. That's like a large percentage of what would be its our national debt. National debt's like 36, 39 trillion. So $500 billion is like a very considerable amount when you compare it to what the nation faces.
Mhm.
And we just get to watch him lie and BS and say, I don't know, on a court on the chair giving testimony. But when we
Right.
watch an 18-year-old, they will do everything in their absolute power to destroy this kid's life,
Right.
make it living hell for him to do anything with himself, brand him as such, give him negative connotation. That's why this stuff just doesn't fly. Ultimately, when you compare the offenses that were committed there, one of those is worth something that you can't even say on YouTube, and one of them is like okay, kid, like maybe don't destroy government property, but whatever, it's not even close, and that's why it rubs me the wrong way so bad. I don't
Yeah.
Who got
care
the
about
money?
the niceties of and being well, this and this so forth. I don't care. Make it so these people would never even think twice about doing something like that again.
Right. And TNT brings up a good point. This was 16 years ago in 2009. I wanted to point that out because it's actually, you say, oh, well, this is old. Like, what's the relevancy? Well, first of all, half a trillion 16 years ago is well over $1 trillion with interest today. But second of all, if this didn't get fixed 16 years ago, this isn't the end of it. You know what I mean? They're still spending more and more and more of that every year up till now. You know what I
Right.
mean? So if you're talking about 16 years times 500 billion, that's $8 trillion. That's just this dude doesn't know where it went. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's insane. That's not counting interest or anything like that. But I tell you what, if you put $6 trillion or $8 trillion in Social Security, that would go a long way to supporting people that once they retire, be able to actually have some type of income, which let's be real about it. I was talking about this uh, on my group chat today. The majority of the people my age have been living paycheck to paycheck since we started working. And we don't have
Right.
extra funds to sit back in some kind of account to retire with. My generation was raised by a pack of wolves essentially, and nobody taught us how to invest. Nobody taught us anything other than go to college, kid, and then maybe you get a job with a 401k or something like that, which that's pretty much anybody that's my age that's invested in anything and has a retirement plan is because they worked at a place that had a 401k or something similar to that, right? But like folks like me who have been working with their hands and back for 25, 30 years, 30 years, yeah, not quite 30 years. I guess it'd be like 25 years, but still, my body has broken down. You end up having knee, back, hand injuries, things like that. But then, now I'm forced to literally go to this, it's chasing a dream, having a YouTube channel and a show and everything like that. But at the same time, 401k, that's funny. I'll put that on the screen so people can see it on the other. But but yeah, totally lost my train of thought there. But no, but it's a shame because if this money would have went to Social Security, not only could I have had a better chance of retiring when it comes my turn, maybe I could have retired a year earlier, or maybe because they could have lowered the age or not had to raise the age or whatever, like they always need to do. And it's just a shame. Like they're not in it for anybody. And I'm telling you, in 20 years, when people my age, 20 some years, when people my age are all hitting that retirement age, it's going to be a huge hit to the system unless they're able to start fixing things, because nobody, very few people my age are set up for retirement. And once we all get beyond that point, we're going to be battling over Walmart greeter jobs and stuff. You're going to have Royal Rumbles for who gets to be the 85-year-old, the 65-year-old greeter in the Walmart. You know what I mean? Because that's like the only job for people like me that come out of this construction realm. Can't continue to build houses and carry bricks and tile and lumber past a certain phase. So we need
Well,
Trump. Yeah, Andrea says we need hoping Trump addresses Social Security. We need Trump to address it, and we need Congress and the House to take it seriously. You know what I mean? It's a vital importance, and if they pass the buck much longer, you're gonna the society is gonna get hit with a huge burden. You know what I mean?
well, it's one of those untenable things, right? So the reason why he's avoided talking about it is because you're going to alienate a huge portion of your base. If you were to even look at like the differences between age versus conservatives and liberals, um, the older party is the Republican Party. The older party is a lot of people who did vote for Trump. Now, the issue also becomes what happens when you do institute something like a tiered schedule, where you're like, okay, well, anybody born in 1980, whatever, you will actually be ineligible for Social Security. So then now these people have to be content with the fact that they have paid into a system their entire lives, and then will have to continue to pay into a system that will only benefit people older than them. Um, there's no way around it because ultimately it either exists or it entirely collapses.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting closer to the reality in which it's going to entirely collapse.
Right.
Now, what that means is that there will be a period of time, probably very soon, whether it's under Trump's admin or not, a lot of old people will immediately have to figure out what they're going to do to be able to keep the roof over their heads.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not getting their Social Security check coming in the mail every month. Now, at the same time, though, it's not as if they didn't pay into Social Security themselves, but to continue passing that torch on to other people, younger kids at that, is a cultural jump we're going to have to make soon. This idea that the young ones must be the ones who have to bear the burden of the older generation cannot fly.
Well, that's
I bring up-
partially why my generation is having such a hard time with it. We overtaxed, you know what I mean? 40%
Right.
of your paycheck comes out. Part of it's going to Social Security. It's been like that for me since I started working when I was 15 years old. You know, if I was able
Right.
to or required to at least put something back into my own retirement fund, I mean, I would be sitting much prettier and probably, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
have a brighter get more money out of Social Security or whatever out of that fund when it came time for me to collect the Social Security. But unfortunately, it's just been yanked out of my paycheck pretty much, you know, with my permission, but I had a choice, right? And so that is what it is. And now it's to the point where I've invested for 50 years by the time I'm ready to retire. And yeah, I want my Social Security when it comes time for it. That's what that was the investment that I put in. So, I mean, it's already started. The young people already have been fitting this bill. And now, like, people my age are looking at it not even being there after paying into it for their whole entire lives. You know, it's holy crap, you know?
Yeah. Well, you also look at the fact that there's also reality in which there's also the idea of Social Security in and of itself is why do we do that, right? Why do we depend on the federal government for families to take care of themselves? That's also another kind of philosophical idea there too, which is why did you not set things aside ahead of time? You know, why is the retirement and your ability to be retired dependent on the government? Now, it's a bit back and forth too, because you also look at the fact of like, well, part of the reason I couldn't pay for my retirement is also because you guys tax me an insane amount. You also look at the fact of, well, inflation is insane. You guys have all of these deals with the bankers, and what you do with printing money also puts a tax on people. That's why I'm saying it's an untenable position. Everyone those who are benefiting from Social Security or looking to soon benefit from Social Security will not back away, and for good reason. They're reaching the end of it. They've paid their whole life into it. They're not going to be at all the first ones to be the ones to say, hey, let's get rid of this, because now what are they going to do? Now when you're looking at retiring at maybe 65 years old, what happens? You're going to have to work till you die. I mean, that's literally like what most people would be looking at if they didn't have Social Security coming in. People will not be voting for that. But the same is true of young kids, where at a certain point, when you realize, like with Thomas Massey, for example, you point out the fact that it's not sustainable right now. And what you're going to, and the big reason of that too, is because we did have a decline in the birth population. So we're going to have more people on Social Security at a certain point than people who are actually paying into it. And that's only going to grow. So what happens when then you have to tell an 18-year-old that instead of 40% of his paycheck goes into Social Security, it's now 65.
Right.
That's when you're going to get, I mean, and then in that reality, if we're going by preference and force doctrine, you're going to have young people revolt against old people. And I think pretty much everyone has a good understanding of how that's probably going to end out.
Right.
or
Well,
turn out.
I can speak to your point where, my daughter's 26 and she can't afford to rent an apartment unless she has a roommate. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like she can't fit the bill, and she has a good job. She's a dental assistant. She makes more money than I did at her age. You know what I mean? And I was actually, I was making payments on a house whenever I was her age. So it's already getting worse because of, like you said, the inflation, the cost of living. Yeah, she's making more than me, but it still doesn't balance the scales. You know what I mean? Just me says right here, my thing is Social Security should be a non-issue. When you look at the billions and trillions wasted on everything else, you realize Social Security should be fully funded with no issues. Yeah, that's true, and that's kind of the moral of the story. What I was mentioning right there was that this dude 500 billion gone missing in 2009. If that was an annual thing, we're talking 8 trillion over the last 16 years that was just squandered. And if they either wouldn't have taxed that on the front end and allowed me to have more of my paycheck, I could have lived a little bit better and not been so stressed and living paycheck to paycheck, losing years off my life and stress. You know what I'm saying? Or been able to invest a little bit in an account for myself, or or if they would have just taken the same amount of money out of my check but then spent it properly, and to take care of Americans with, it only makes sense that the American government would want to prioritize Americans' lives and their retirement after taxing us at such an astronomical rate, which was like against the Constitution until the 1920s when they rewrote some stuff. We all got by off tariffs until that point.
Well,
Which Trump is bringing back the tariffs, so hopefully, as Dirty Money's been bringing up there, that Trump is talking about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax. We need no tax on Social Security. We need no tax, like property tax. Like once your house is paid off, I shouldn't have to make half a payment to keep my house, like to the government. It's like I already paid the shit off over a 30-year loan. Like, let me have my peace.
Well, there's a couple things with that too. One of the examples, I think even Tim Pool brings this up pretty often, is the idea of how Japan handled the failing of their nuclear reactors. This is before a time in which they had ultimate ability to determine like what was going on, and they wanted to be able to make sure like was the area safe or not. There needed to be cleanup done, and so what ended up happening was all of the old folks in that area took that burden upon themselves. They were like, "We've lived our lives. We're going to take these risks on ourselves. We're not going to send all of you young folk into this area when we know there's probably high risk of death and what will come with turmoil." And they chose to do that. Whereas, again, you look at the situation here, it's the opposite, where the whole idea of Social Security is this idea that falls onto propagating this idea of retirement, which ultimately didn't exist until we had spare income, free income. People before the ages of like 1800s and so even probably even later than that, you didn't retire. I mean, like that idea is a very new kind of thing.
Mhm.
Most people did have to work ultimately until they perished, or what came first a lot of the times was health ailment that prevented them from working. And
Mhm.
so they would end up being taken care of for a short period of time before they ultimately perished. What most people don't realize is the reality of Social Security running out is very, very soon. I mean, the timeline has been getting expedient. What's the right word for that? It's been getting expedited very quickly. The estimates that I've seen recently are like things like with 2035. By 2035, the full benefits of Social Security cannot be upheld. They'll fall to like 80% at like the maximum. And so if you're looking at the fact that people are being paid like $1,000 a month, maybe just to get by, that goes down to $800. But if we map that with also how inflation's operating, you can expect that $800 and the value of the dollar to also decrease as well. So there's two taxes going on there, and then money's not going to nearly stretch for far enough. What ultimately you'd have to ask for is for Social Security to become one of the primary functions of the government for it to continue. Now, people can be mad at a lot of different things, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it's just the reality of it. That's why I kept saying it's untenable, because there's really no good position you can take on it. But with that being said, if you end up what happens then when you do get a representative government where people come in and they decide that hey, we're not going to do this anymore. You also look at the fact of the lack of transfer of wealth between like the boomer generations to their children. That's a lot of the situation where most people are in, especially around your age, world, was a lot of the baby boomers, of the early first generation baby boomers, just squandered their money and chose to live for themselves, but very little aside for their family. That's how you get the meme of the buffalo herd pack running around, and they kick their young one out because they want to save themselves. They kick their like their child. That's in that is not a sustainable way of operating. There, and again, politics is downstream from culture, but until that kind of go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've experienced, currently am experiencing what you just said. These boomers are trying to spend every last penny that they have before they die.
Right.
You know, to say it as simply as that. And it's just like, wait a minute. You guys are just you've been catered to your whole lives. You're just that freaking greedy. You got to spend it all before you die. You're literally, you've worked in the era where you could start at the ground floor and work your way up. You retired before inflation took an astronomical hit, and then you pulled up the ladder behind you. And now the things that we suffered through as kids, because of that, you know what I mean, are there's nothing coming back to us in the end, because you are now trying to literally spend everything that you have as fast as you possibly can. And this point here from Just Me, this is talking about the death tax. Yes, Andrea, it's so huge that it causes farmers to lose their land when their dad dies, for example. They are taxed on value of the land, not actual money that they have in the bank, and they just don't have that money, of course, to pay the tax. So then they lose their land. And I have actually, one of my best friends back in Kansas City, his grandmother lost hundreds of acres because of that exact scenario. The government also ran up the value of the property in the interim to the point where it was a landfill first. She was getting a monthly income off of it being a landfill. It got full, and then the monthly income stopped coming in, but they still taxed it as if it was equally as valuable. And she ended up just handing it over. The government stole hundreds of acres from her. Like, she couldn't use it, couldn't hand it down, couldn't nothing. It was just gone because they couldn't afford paying that. There was not any sense in paying the taxes on it. It was literally a useless piece of land that was a landfill underneath it. You couldn't do anything to it. You couldn't develop on it. You couldn't sell. It just becomes useless.
Well, and think about how many, there's probably people in this chat, how many people have had grandparents who live by themselves in a massive home, ultimately deciding not to sell out, not to downsize. All of these things that don't lend itself to helping anyone down the line. And that's where, you have this kind of atomized society where, all the nuclear families are kind of separated, where even previously, not too long ago, grandparents would also live in the home with others. There'd be people to help as well too. So the idea of this kind of like the retirement and such would be a bit more tenable, because you're all living under one roof. Everyone can kind of pitch into a bigger idea. But that's also, you do need to live in like a decently sized house for that to make that work. When everyone's kind of boxed in a New York apartment, or BlackRock bought up all of the apartments around your area, now you got to pay $1,400 to live in a shoebox. Or say they bought all of the property and lots in a nearby area where you could actually purchase a mobile home. Maybe that be your starter house, and then they scoot the rent as high as they possibly can to make it feasible for the area. All these things have a stake in it too. That's why I think it's better that we, at least everyone's aware of the fact that like this is a reality, like it's something's going to happen. But I just like, me personally, I don't like the idea of passing bills to spend multi-billions of dollars to continually to fund the program. Now, I will say, though, I do agree. Someone said it earlier. If I had to pick between like Ukraine and Israel getting the money, well, it's like, well, yeah, dude, I would definitely prefer we just dump that money into our social security system. Like, at least that helps the people here. But there's only so far you can go with constantly printing money, operating on a spending deficit, or not a spending deficit, before you just pass the torch down the line. Like the people, your children, the ones that you give birth to, will now have to deal with the bigger problem, because we kept trying to like figure out a way to not just nip it in the butt, if that makes sense. And so I just think that's why it's untenable. People are going to be really, really, really like one-sided or the other with this, right? I think the young kids are like, get rid of it. I paid in it for a couple of years. Who cares? I don't want it. I'll figure it out.
I'll invest my own. Yeah.
Versus those who are ready, who paid into it and were like, well, at least when I retire at 65, I'll have this. And it's kind of it's bad on both sides, because there's somebody who's like, well, I didn't need to really have a retirement plan because I knew Social Security would kick in at one point. You pull the rug out from underneath them. It's like, well, now you're going to really screw people over.
Yeah. Sorry, I was typing there.
No, I was going to say, I do have to wrap this up though.
I still got to film 2 videos, so we should probably wrap up. I still got more work to do for the day. But it's been a great show. Many thanks to Dan McKnight for coming on tonight. That was really educational. I love hearing what he's been doing. Like you said, he went and met with Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard, and he met Tom Homan, and the dude's definitely out there doing some work for the National Guard. And we appreciate him taking some time to be on here with us and shoot the stuff and all that stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anytime. And also, obviously he's welcome to come on anytime, and I'm sure he'll come on again in the future. I just look forward to the day where we have thousands of viewers and he can share his message with many, many more people. Not being selfish, but just literally, I feel like everybody needs to hear what Dan has to say. And so appreciate everybody that's been here. Thanks for the super chats, TNT and Donnie.
Yeah. Big thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. And with that, we got this one off real quick. It's 25 seconds. We'll just play this real fast because I believe it's funny. I haven't seen it, right? The Trump one.
Oh yeah. No, it's pretty good. It's about I remember it now. It's with his interaction with the reporter.
Okay, so we'll just play this real quick and then we'll sign off.
Vice President suggested that if the Supreme Court rules in a way that you don't like, they can just enforce it by themselves. Do you agree with that?
I don't know even what you're talking about. Neither do you. Who are you with?
Up close, sir.
Who?
Up close.
Oh, no wonder. I thought they died. Are they still around? I haven't read them in years. I thought they died. All right, go ahead. Who else?
Vice President.
He was saying Huff Post, if you guys couldn't tell. That was really funny. He's like, who are you with? Oh, I thought they died. No wonder.
Yeah.
Trump trolling you right to your face. That's just, you just kind of crawl up in a ball whenever you go home on that one. So good. So good. But with that, make sure everybody hits the like button, subscribe, shares, all that good YouTube stuff. If you're watching over on X, make sure you hit the follow button. I'll follow most of you back as long as you're posting the stuff. If it's a blank account or if it's in a different language, I don't got anything to gain from it. So just being real with you. I did have one guy, I can't think of the name right now. He followed me earlier. I went ahead and gave him a follow back. Robert Frobshire. So anyways, just so you know, I proved it with that one. I do follow people back. All that good stuff. And then go check out Dan's websites as well. Maybe consider joining his call force, things like that. I think that was a good idea. I might look into that myself, to be honest with you. But yeah, anything you got to add?
No, thanks everybody for being here. As always, we appreciate it. You guys drive the show. Again, thanks for the super chats. Also, shout out to Cooper DeJean for having a white man's Jackie Robinson moment. White cornerbacks are back. But with that, also, Christ is King. We will see you guys in the future on Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. And also, just a reminder, we do have a Discord. The link is in the description. Would love to see you guys join that as well. And other than that, once again, Christ is King. We'll see you guys on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And by the way, Dirty Money is going to join us one of these shows, maybe this week. I don't know about Wednesday. We'll just have to work out the schedule, but either Wednesday or Saturday, Dirty Money will be on with us. So looking forward to having him on his first live on the jar openers. So anyways, like I said, Christ is King. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.
Peace out, everybody.
With war rolling at the start, we here to bring the truth. Jar open this podcast, we breaking through the fake news. They try to silence us, but we will be subdued. We're bearded alpha males here to save the youth. Spitting fire on the mic with our bass Christian takes. Exposing the lies, keeping the demons at bay. We ain't afraid to speak up, we won't be swayed. Jar open this podcast, where the truth is laid. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas up, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. We ain't playing games, we're on a mission to awaken the masses with our intuition. Pulling out the corruption with no inhibition. Jar open this podcast, sparking a revolution. We're not afraid to stand tall in a world full of deceit. We're the voice of reason, bringing light to the street. Keeping it real, never missing a beat. Jar open this podcast, where the truth meets the heat. Jar openers, cracking open the lies. We're rolling Atlas up, we're here to rise. Bearded alpha males saving the youth from the godless demons, spreading the truth. Jar open this podcast, where the truth will never cease. Join us on the journey to bring back peace. We're rolling Atlas thugged, fearless in our release. Jar open this podcast, where the lies will decrease.